Good evening, hackers. We want to thank you for joining Garuda Hacks 2.0, our annual premier hackathon. Today will be the first out of a 5-day speaker series to help you along your hacking journey. If you haven't already, please join the Discord link on the screen. We also advise you to keep checking your emails for schedule updates. So, without further ado, let's introduce our first speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian. I am the managing director of Garuda Hacks. Really excited to get this project started, and also shout out to all my teammates for making this possible. So, we'll be having the technical meeting today, and this meeting is designed to help you guys kind of on your journey and also navigate our Discord channel, um, also our projects, and generally a few tips from us to make your project more successful. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get started. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about our organization. We are Garuda Hacks, and our mission is to create events that empower young people with the motivation and skills needed to create solutions for society's most pressing issues. Sorry. And we do that because we envision a community of future technology leaders, and we want to cultivate a culture of student entrepreneurship in Indonesia. So I was one of the original co-founders of Garuda Hacks, and we started Garuda Hacks just because it was 2020. We all didn't have internships during the summer, so we decided to start Garuda Hacks for fun. But it grew to become a really big organization, and we started Garuda Hacks 1.0, and we had Future Tech Leaders Fellowship behind us, and now we are proud to present Garuda Hacks 2.0. So from our end, we want to tell you guys to first of all join our Discord channel. A lot of the conversation is happening there. So hop on to tinyurl.com/GarudaHacks Discord V2, and also sign up for a dev post. That's where you will be uploading your projects, and also um, letting the judges view your projects. So signing up for that earlier on will help you avoid any last minute issues with dev posts. So the link to join DevPost is tinyurl.com / Garuda Hacks DevPost V2. Finally, you want to follow us on our Instagram at Garuda Hacks, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel so that because we'll be posting a lot of our information on our speakers, and also we'll be providing information through YouTube as well. So let's talk about Discord first. If you have already navigated through Discord, you'll see that there are several channels. So let's start with perks. So perks is where you access information on infrastructure packages. So we are partnering with several companies that will help you create your dream project. Be sure to look at rules and announcements from time to time, as we remind you about the rules and announcements, and make sure that we create this hackathon to be really inclusive for everybody and create a positive experience for all. Q&A is for questions about the hackathon itself and also logistics. Mentors help is where you will ask mentors for help. Um, Very intuitive, but you should only use this channel only during the hackathon. Where most of the action is happening is where you can looking for hackers or looking for team. That's where you form teammates if you haven't already. And finally, we will in a few days we'll have several companies. So we'll have Sinbad, we'll have Shopee come over, a lot of our other companies that are posted on our website, and that is where you will network with company representatives and also inquire about hiring opportunities. So there are a lot of people on our Discord, but you can identify some of the people that you might need to look for. So look for Garuda HQ staff. So people with the tag GHQ, they are all GHQ staff. So ask us about anything really, and we'll be pleased to direct you to anyone. Um, and then we'll have people with their company names. So for example, Shopee, ticket.com. So those are company representatives. So do ask them about hiring opportunities or how to use their platform. So if there's a representative from Type Dream, you can ask them about guidance on how to use their platform. We'll also have mentors. We're grateful to have technical mentors. So team mentor is indicates for a technical mentor. So be free to ask them about technical support. NT mentor is non-technical mentors, so they're best for helping you guys out with project ideation and also how to best pitch to your how to best pitch to your judges. TNT mentor is best basically the best of both worlds. You can ask them about technical support and also about non-technical support, so the business ideas. Finally, there will be people from MLH, Major League Hacking, that have been supporting us. So if you find people from MLH, and if you want to ask them about the organization or talk about other issues, you can also ping them as well. So let's talk a little bit about project infrastructure. We are grateful to be sponsored by six infrastructure companies: Balsamic, Wolfram, TypeDream, OnePassword.xyz, and also Echo 3D. We will be handing out the codes to you guys this week shortly before our hackathon. You don't need to use any of our infrastructure projects partners to create submit a project, but these companies are really there to kind of help you with your project. However, do note that some of the prizes may require you to use a certain infrastructure to be eligible, so please do check. So, for example, for one of our no-code awards, it does require that you use a no-code platform, for example, TypeDream, to be eligible. So that is one caveat to not using one of our infrastructure projects. So please do make sure that you stick by all the guidelines to make sure that you're not missing out on anything. We will have 30 plus prizes. So we have cash money, VC office hour slots, accelerated interviewer slots, also bragging rights. The list of prizes will be provided 24 hours before the hackathon. There are some prizes that you will have to apply for. So, for example, if your project is an economic opportunity project and you want to be applying for, and you want to submit an economic opportunity project, you will click on the economic opportunity prize when you submit to DevPost. However, we will also apply some prizes to your project as we grade through them and as we review them. So there's also the judging criteria for right. So let's talk about our possible tracks. So we do have three tracks this year. So we have sustainability, economic opportunity, and small businesses. So the guiding questions are posted on our website. So you can think about your idea now, but the actual code must be written during the 36-hour period. So projects are eligible and considered complete if they fulfill all of the following criteria. They contain a video submission and code within 36 hours. We also accept wireframes and also prototypes. So typically typically the main ways that we evaluate a project. They must answer one of the tracks that they have that we mentioned earlier. They must never been submitted to any other hackathons. So if you have submitted to a hackathon either this week or last week, they will not be eligible for completion. Um, it does not contain content that violates Major League Hacking's guidelines, and that they are submitted before 11 p.m. on the 21st of November, Waktu Indonesia Barat, GMT +7. So last year we did implement a 5-hour extension period for people to submit their projects, and you may have benefited from that last year. This year we will not allow any late submissions, and there will be no exceptions. So we do have two judging criteria. So first of all, we do have conception, and we also have technical. Let me talk about conception first. Um, Typically, when people create hackathon projects, they forget about the concept part. But this is a really important part of our of the overall grade that we assign when we judge projects. So we're looking for 20% originality. So we are looking for projects that bring awareness to issues that not many people are currently trying to solve, and we're looking for unconventionality. So we do have a lot of issues in Indonesia, and there are some issues that are borrowing off of existing ideas. So, for example, using ride sharing to solve issues. I think that's not an entirely new idea. We're looking for projects that that tackle your project with a new angle. So I think those are two of the aspects. We're mostly looking for uniqueness, and if you have two of those aspects, you're really, really good, and judges will look favorably upon you. We'll also have technical aspects of the project. This is the main part of the project that we're looking for. So we're looking for brevity, which is 30% of the grade. We are looking for the front end and back end code, and whether it's free of errors and concise. And we are looking as to whether or not you can simplify your code further. So more is not necessarily better. So if you use machine learning, if you use AI, but there is no need for that, it wouldn't help you in your project. We want code that is simple and easy to incorporate and understand. Finally, there's also practicality. So, how scalable is the idea, and how much work is it needed to scale up and also push the idea further? We're looking for completeness in the minimal viable product or the prototype of your work. Um, we have 25 plus judges from a variety of different backgrounds. We have software engineers, business analysts, venture capital partners, startup founders, hackathon winners. So a whole spectrum of judges available to review our project. They're from Berry Ventures, Google, McKinsey and Company, Boston Consulting Group, Facebook, which is now known as Meta, Type Dream, and also some staff members from Garuda Hacks. So our goal is to basically create a wide variety of opinions who will help you review your projects. At least 15 judges will review your projects. So we really have confidence in the fact that all your projects will be graded fairly and reviewed fairly. So all judging decisions are final or cannot be disputed. So I was a judge last year, and I saw a lot of different projects last year, and I think that I do want to impart some advice for you guys. So first tip is to focus on your hack's value proposition and concept first. The code can really take place later. You have 36 hours to create a hack, but you really want to make sure that your value proposition and your concept of your hack really clicks together before you start coding. It's not funny if you start for 18 hours on an idea and then suddenly you have to restart because you didn't think your idea was solid enough. We don't expect you to have a flawless front end and back end. I mean, it's after all, you're creating something in 36 hours, but the concept should be there. Second, create a clear video. As I mentioned earlier, um, we will be requiring your code on GitHub and also a clear video to kind of understand your hack's value proposition and how you built it. So we really want to have a clear video to make sure that you can explain your project well, um, so that we're not really confused on what, or we don't have to navigate the app ourselves. We recommend using Loom to record your video to avoid problems. Loom has worked really well for a lot of our participants in the past, and we expect it to. We don't. We encourage you to try other ways for sure. I mean, if you have other ways of recording your video, for sure, we welcome that. But Loom has worked. Loom has worked really well for us and also our participants in the past. Finally, set strict internal timelines. I know that 36 hours isn't a lot, but you do want to set goals at the start of the hackathon. So with your team, so like, okay, for the last 6 hours, we need to record video, or for the last 3 hours, we need to upload the project. So you really want to have those internal timelines so that you don't um, run focus too much on one part, and then forget entirely about another part, which is extremely crucial. Also, make sure that you set aside time to sleep. I mean, your health above everything. I do want to present a project which I really thought was one of the top projects last year. This project is Nusa Lingua, and Nusa Lingua is a language app that teaches young people how to speak local dialects and languages. As we know, Indonesia has 700 different dialects that is spoken by Indonesia's diverse population. I'll let you look at the video and
Indonesia is
what you
an
would think.
archipelago country that has different cultures and backgrounds. These differences cause Indonesia to have 718 regional languages. 266 regional languages are weak, and 75 are dying or in danger. The disorientation of the language learning curriculum in Indonesia has made local language learning begin to be underestimated. Educational orientation that tries to uphold national and international languages has castrated the urgency of regional language to become marginal languages. In addition, Indonesia lacks local language teachers. Therefore, we created Nusa Lingua, mobile-based application that can help you learn local languages in a more interactive way that can be learned anytime and anywhere. First, register to create an account. After successfully registering, you can log in. Course feature provides a learning path based on the regional language you want to learn. You can choose the available course topics. Smart Scan feature. You can scan an image of an area's characteristic icon. After the scan is successful, the information on the name of the area and its location will appear. When you click on View, detailed information about the area, location, icon, historical facts will appear, as well as the language used in the area. Click the local language to go to the course, so you can learn it right away. This feature can increase your interest in learning the language of an area. Smart Scan feature. Historical facts will appear, as well as the language used in the area. Click the local language to go to the course, so you can learn it right away. This feature can increase your interest in learning the language of an area. Flashcard feature contains a small quiz to recall the material that has been learned on the course. This quiz is fun and not required to be done. With the Nusa Lingua application, we hope that you will be more interested in learning local languages as an effort to preserve culture. Nusa Lingua, learn and preserve local language.
So I think I did talk to the other judges, and a lot of the opinions that they have was that this was an issue that was prevailing in Indonesia. A lot of people do know that there's a language issue in Indonesia, of a lot of languages dying, but not a lot of work has been done thoroughly. But Nusa Lingua tries to accomplish that by creating an app, and as you can see, a lot of the pictures are not done, and I think that is explainable within for a hack that is 36 hours. We don't expect the entire website to be to the entire platform to be really working as when you would launch it to go to market. So stock photos are entirely fine, but we really want to see is like the value proposition that you're trying to offer, as well as the app or the website, and kind of see it function, or um, close to functioning.
Indonesia is
Okay, so finally, I do want to talk about creating an inclusive community. Here at Garuda Hacks, we take this very seriously, and we take pride in creating an inclusive and fair environment for everyone. So, some of the ways that you can help us keep this community is, please don't spam the chat room, whether it's Discord or whether it is through YouTube. Please reserve that for questions for the speakers. Please be respectful to everyone, judges, speakers, GHQ staff, and each other. We really work hard to be here, and we're united by our love for hackathons and our love for programming. So, really appreciate it if you can, keep this environment really safe for everyone. And also, please create respectful and innovative hacks. Um, Doing your part, we really ask you to also help out. And if you need to report anything, do reach out to anyone named GHQ, and we will help you address any issues. All reports will remain anonymous. Yeah, and finally, I'll end with grounds for disqualification. So, Garuda Hacks and the judges reserve the right to disqualify any project without prior notification on the following grounds. If the team has been proven to have conduct engaged in harassment or discrimination. What if the team is engaged in disrespectful behavior towards GHQ members, speakers, mentors, and judges, and also verified cheating? So my TLDR is be nice, and you don't have to worry about this. Thank you, and I'll leave time for questions, or I'll answer questions on the chat room. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to shoot them in the chat. Awesome. So, yeah. So, Kendrick, do you mind if you read over some of the chats that we have, or any of the questions that we have?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a question. Can we still form teams like right now if we don't
Uh-huh.
have a team yet?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the teams are, we do have several Discord channels that we have. So, looking for team and also looking for hackers. Those are, several ways that you can kind of network with other people. So, if you want to like have a chat with anyone in particular, if I think like one really good way is to kind of introduce yourself into the community, and if you have any technical skills, um, non-technical skills, do mention that, and eventually someone will who's looking for a team will come after you. And I think if everything goes well, you'll form the team and become friends and get acquainted with everyone along the way.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So the next question we have is there maximum duration for the video?
Yeah, the maximum duration for the video is 2 minutes. So we do recommend keeping it short. If you exceed 2 minutes, 15 seconds, that will be that will be penalized. And I think that 2 minutes, 15 seconds, and after 2 minutes, 30 seconds, the judges are instructed to stop watching the video and evaluate the project as is. So it's really good if you can keep it under 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is will there be a pitching or presentation session?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, typically for other hackathons, we do have, traditionally they do have a pitching or pitching session. But I think that for Garuda Hacks in particular, because our judges are kind of busy, and also um, there's a lot of projects to go through. So I don't think we have that time. Rather, I do recommend that you kind of keep your the pitching and also the sharing session is primarily given through the YouTube video that you will upload through DevPost. So those are the ways that we will be evaluating our projects. So like I said earlier, make sure that your video is clear and concise, so that your the judges do have an understanding of what you're trying to say.
Awesome, awesome. So we do have a question here. Is there an option that if we can we compete solo in the hackathon?
Sure. Yeah, we do have a lot of solo hackers that happened that took place last year, and they did really well. Most people do take part in teams, but if you want to do solo, for sure, man.
Yeah, awesome. So the next question is from Angelique. Are there any tips and tricks to win the big prize?
I think tips and tricks to win the big prize. I think it's to start looking at some of our think about the idea now. Like shameless plug, but I think that a lot of the we do have some speakers coming along tonight and also on Friday. And if you can't, and if you can't make it, don't worry. We'll upload them on YouTube. But I think that um, these are speakers who specialize in their own tracks. So economic opportunity, sustainability, small businesses, they do have working experience, and they have seen what it's like to kind of tackle issues in this field. So coming to these talks, especially if you don't have a good understanding about Indonesia, if you want to look for inspiration, we really recommend that you come over and um, have a look at the talks, and ask questions during that time. And
Okay.
another tip and trick to win the big prize is
Ah,
to, make sure that you work together harmoniously as a team. Because like I know like a lot of the teams that I did meet a lot of the teams that won last year, and the teams that won last year were actually really tight knit, even though they just met. So making sure that you get to know your team before you start, making sure you delegate your work. Those are really some tips and tricks to win the big prize.
okay, thank you. Awesome. So we have a question from Renadi. Are registrations still open? I assume Renadi hasn't registered yet.
Yeah. If you haven't registered, registration is still open for sure. If you have friends who want to take part in the hackathon, feel free to invite them. We will close registrations on the 19th of November. So please be sure to sign up quickly so that you get everything in.
Yeah. So the next question, like a few people asked about this. So, is it 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes? And is the video supposed to include all of the pitch, the demo, and the solution, problem statement, all
Yeah.
that stuff within the 2.5? Yep.
So it's going to be we recommend keeping it under 2 minutes. So just because and 2 minutes 15 seconds the judges will start taking off points just because it's too long, and after 2 minutes 30 seconds the judges will stop watching the video completely. um and so we do recommend keeping it under 2 minutes, so that you do explain everything really quickly and concisely. um I know it's a bit challenging to include the problem, the demo, and the solution, but I think that for Nusa Lingua, they did it in 2 minutes 15. So, I think it's really possible to do that. Um, just make sure that you rehearse the speech, and also make sure that there isn't any issues with recording. And if you have any if you really need to retake it, do retake it, because we want to make sure that your video is flawless, so that the judges have no difficulty in viewing them.
Okay. So the next question, I think it's a pretty interesting question from Warren. Will there be a special category or prize for high school students?
Yes, we really, really appreciate high school students who, take part in our hackathon at a very early age. So we do have special prizes for high school students, and we, encourage your friends to sign up. Um, yeah, and there will be a special category for high school students. So, and don't be intimidated, especially if you're worried about competing against college students, because we do have our own special prizes as well, for you guys.
Okay, so next, is the product we make strictly in English, or should it can it be in Indonesian or any other languages?
So we can provide English and Indonesian, but we do recommend it to be in English, just because some of our judges may not be able to speak Indonesian. But if you're uncomfortable with speaking in English, you're totally it's totally fine if you want to upload, if you want to totally upload video in Indonesian. That's totally permitted.
Awesome, awesome. The next question is from Andre. Is it possible to submit a real product, not only a prototype?
Um, yeah, I do think that some people do submit their own products, a real product, but I think that it'll be extremely challenging to do it under 36 hours. So really recommend just keeping a prototype or a wireframe. Um, we do reward points for completeness, but we don't expect the entire real product to be ready in 36 hours. So just a prototype, I think that'll be fine, and I think that you're better off spending the time creating other parts of the hack, like for example writing your problem statement on dev post, and also creating your video. So those are some ways that you better spend your time, I would say.
Okay, so we do have a question from Natasha. I'm still looking for good team members at the moment. Any tips on how to look good and look for reliable team members?
I think like I said before, we do have several ways. So for Discord, we do recommend you checking out Discord. But if you're and networking with people that way, but I do think that you know if you want to, like, if you're uncomfortable with meeting strangers, do look out for friends, asking friends if who are interested in computer science or coding at your school. Family members, those are really good ways to get in touch with people, and maybe sometimes through group chat as well. So for example, Straw Hat Crew and Warren, I think that if you guys are high school students, you can create a team together. So several ways that you can find good and reliable team members.
Okay, so I think we have time for uh, two more questions, I think. Firstly, from Farhan. So, the deliverables are in video presentation and GitHub repository. Do
Yeah,
we need to submit
video.
anything else?
Video presentation, GitHub repository, and also on your dev post, you're required to fill in a few blanks, like for example your hack name, what you're trying to achieve, some of the prizes that you're applying for. So it's video presentation, GitHub repository, and also um, dev post submission, which shouldn't take long.
Okay, so I think this is the last question we have time for today. Can we create our apps in Thunkable, Codeler, or any other app developing sites?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do provide several ways to um, we do have like several channels or several infrastructure companies that we work with um, to help you create your project. For example, Type Dream, they help you create a website from scratch without coding at all. But you're not required to use one or any of these sources, but rather you can create anything in C, or you can create anything in Python for sure. I mean, sky's the limit, and we really want to see a lot of different apps, or a lot of different ways that you can create your own project.
Okay, do we have any more questions? We actually have a little bit more time, so ask your questions now.
Awesome. If there's no other questions, thank you so much for coming. Oh, can we use pre-built components? We don't allow pre-built components, so you do have to build everything from scratch. But I think that's like a way that we kind of evaluate whether or not you use code from any other ways. So I think that building the project from scratch, I think it's a lot better, rather than using pre-built components.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it from this session. We do have another session coming up from one of our company sponsors. So thank you, Brian, for opening up this 5 day speaker event.
All right, thank you so much, guys, for coming. And if you have any questions at all, just feel free to shoot them through Discord, and we'll be happy to answer them. Have a great evening, and I hope you enjoy the speaker sessions. So yeah, we do have one more question. So is it okay to build only for a specific platform, like iOS only, or do we have to provide multi-platforms? Um, yeah, it's totally fine if you want to build a specific platform for iOS. So for example, um, Nusa their created their apps for specifically for Android. So iOS only or Android only is totally fine. We don't expect it to create multi platforms. Yeah, so just a prototype and one platform is totally fine.
Okay, I think you missed a question here, Brian. Renadi asked about can we use CSS library?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so CSS library, that's allowed. So do make sure that we do like allow some use from we do use allow some use from um, pre-built components, but try and make sure that it doesn't consist, or it doesn't make up all of your front end or back end.
Okay, I think there are no more questions. So I think that's about it for this session. We do have another one coming up. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
So for our next guest, we would like to invite three speakers from our sponsor company, Sinbad. Mr. Oki, Miss Jackie, and Mr. Wisnu. To provide a little background on our speakers, Mr. Oki serves as the Business Operations Manager, while Mr. Jackie is the Project Management Officer, and Mr. Wisnu is the Software Engineering Manager of Sinbad. Let's give him a warm welcome. As a reminder, please put all questions down in the chat, and we'll read them at the end of the session.
Thank you, Kendrick, and to the whole Garuda team. And good evening to all you Garuda hackers. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Oki, and I'm the Business Operations Manager at Sinbad. And tonight I'm joined by my awesome colleagues, Jackie and JP. And we'd like to present Sinbad our story and hope to give you a better picture of who we are, what we do, and some exciting career opportunities that we offer. So what are we going to talk about tonight? There's going to be 8 components, right? Varying from our vision and mission, our story. I'm going to give you a glimpse in the day of a sailor in some of our teams, talk about the engineer life cycle, the sailor journey, and we'll end with a sailor management trainee program information. So let's kick off with our vision and mission. So the vision of Sinbad is to help independent retailers prosper through technology. And how do we do that? Well, our mission is to become Indonesia's #1 business-to-business e-commerce platform by simplifying the interactions between traditional retailers and their suppliers. So what does that look like from a story point of view? So we were established in 2018. We're based in Jakarta, Indonesia, and about to open our new office in Kuningan, for those that are familiar with Jakarta. And as of today, we have 4 products. The Sinbad app, Sinbad Agent, the Sinbad Seller Center, and our admin panel. And we also have a catalog of more than 5,000 fast-moving consumer goods. And you probably know some of them. You've probably used them today. They range from coffee to toothpaste to water, instant noodles, and baby milk formula. And what is also really interesting to know is that in Indonesia, the FMCG market is actually the 4th largest industry. Now, you can imagine that that is a huge potential for us to tap into. So the impact that we're trying to create here is to have an ecosystem that connects all our stakeholders in the supply chain by offering a software as a service digital platform. And this way we optimize the suppliers as well as empower our merchants. What does that look like in numbers? Just to give you a little overview, right? So where we are today, since almost 3 years ago, is that we have sold to more than 50,000 stores. And we've received more than 760,000 orders. And of course, we couldn't have done this without our sailors. So the sailors is the name that we use for our team members. And we've increased our team by about 1,000% in the last 3 years. When we started humbly with 14, we stand at about 150 today. And talking about sailors, Jackie's going to tell you a little bit more about this.
Thank you so much, Oki, for sharing some background on Sinbad. And good evening to all fellow Garuda hackers. So to introduce myself, my name is Jackie. I am a project management officer here at Sinbad, having joined a little less than a year ago. Today, I'd like to give you an inside look into the endless opportunities that we have available within the company. So as Oki mentioned, Sinbad has grown more than 1,000% since it first formed in 2018, which really wouldn't have happened without the contributions and hard work of all our amazing sailors. So as some of you may be exploring career options or wonder what it's like to work as a full-time employee in a startup, we wanted to showcase a few of our stellar sailors and give you a glimpse of their work life. Since everything you see of Sinbad's, whether it be the app, the web portal, and website, has been carefully designed by our creative team, the product design team naturally is a crucial function to the company. So I'd like to introduce to you Maya, one of our young product designers, who will share what her role entails and what a day in her life looks like. So we're just going to play this next video right here.
We do.
Sorry about that. Hold on one moment.
So as we're waiting for the right video to appear, we understand this is a very exciting event, and there've been lots of people that signed up, and we also look forward to many of the projects that you're going to be working on. And here we are with Maya.
My name is Maya. I'm a product designer at Sinbad, and in this video, I'm here to show you what a typical workday as a sailor looks like. First, let's get into what is product design. In short, product design is the process designers use to blend user needs with business goals to help brands make consistently successful products. So why did I choose product design? I consider myself to be a creative person and I enjoy problem solving. Product design allows me to solve problems through creative solutions so that our customers can have the best user experience when using our products. So here's what my calendar looks like for today. I start my day off with daily stand-up meetings, one with my design team and another with the product manager that I'm currently working with. These meetings are so that we are all aligned and updated with one another. Here's an example of my coworker's day.
Selamat pagi semuanya. Thank you untuk kemarin aktivitasnya seharian field study di Tangerang, warehouse-nya itu, dan ya kita generate data lah untuk user kita yang bagian untuk Sinbad White ya. Banyak banget insight yang bisa kita dapetin dan untuk improvement kita ke depannya. Okay, thank you.
Okay, now at around 11 a.m., I have a design system discussion where we all come together as a team and work on the design system. The design system is a live component, and so it's important to always maintain it. We use Figma to design our products. I would say this meeting is a good time to work together and chat, especially since we have started working from home. This is a good opportunity to virtually hang out and feel like we are all in the same office. So now it's time for my lunch break. Sometimes I take this time to catch up on emails or Slack channels. However, this is an important time to rest, recharge, and refocus. Okay, now it's 2 p.m. and it's time for my ideation sprint meeting. This is where the product manager transfers product vision to the designer. The product manager briefs me with an idea. We work together to build on the idea and discuss the best possible user experience. I turn this vision into visuals and start off by creating user flows, then wireframe, and eventually high-fidelity designs to be later passed on to the tech team. Alright, now it's 5 p.m. and time for the last event of my day. This session is one of a presentation series called Coast to Coast, which is created by the design team in order to increase design competency and promote team collaboration. Today's topic is learning experience from field study, and so far we have had other topics such as UX designer, growth and career path, and Jake Knapp's design sprint theory. Okay guys, that's it for my day. I hope this video gave you insight in what a day in the life of a product designer here at Sinbad looks like. Every day is different, but I'm constantly learning and growing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.
Hello. Nice to meet you. My name is Rere Astarina and I work in Sinbad as a product manager. Today, I'm going to share to you a day in the life of product manager, and my friend Bagus will tell you more about this. So stay tuned.
Hello everyone, my name is Bagus. For those who new to this term, product manager is a role that is responsible to answer users' problems that are aligned within company's objectives. This role is like intersections of design, business, and tech. To illustrate, it's like being a conductor in an orchestra. We work with many special talented roles here such as business team, CS team, data, design, engineering, etc. to make sure that we are delivering the best symphony that we call a product that solves real user problem. I usually start with knowing what is my highlight of the day. I start with checking my calendar, Slack, email, and dashboard to know how the feature is doing. Before building a product, we have to collect the requirement first. One way that we do this is by having meetings and talk with related stakeholders to capture business objective or understanding our user through data and research documentation. All these meetings are helpful to give us a helicopter view about what is happening to our product. Once we understand the situations, we dig deeper into specific case. We make a readable document that we call BRD. The purpose of BRD is to align the scope of works that we want to tackle and how does it impact on our business. This is very important. Without this, people would likely get lost on what problem you are trying to solve. PM's role here is to validate the case and ensure if every stakeholders are on the same page. Let's say if everyone is agree on your proposals. Now is the time to cook something fun. We have a session called Ideation Sprint where PM and PD are allowed to go beyond the moon, crafting the best possible user experience for our users through visuals. PM is responsible to transferring product visions to product designers. Usually we do make a user story and activity diagram to convey the message. PD then will make it visuals. We do ideation checkpoint together to ensure that everything is on the right track. Once you're done with the ideation sessions, you will get high fidelity designs and PRD. These are really help you to talk with the engineer team when you are about to start developing your product. We are using Scrum method here. Development run in sprint every 2 weeks, and it is managed by the engineering team. They build, test the feature, and comes to the very crucial part, make it live so that our users can enjoy our product.
Okay guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have question or something on your mind, please don't hesitate to reach us because we will show you more. Thanks again and see ya!
So now that we've gotten a look at some of our two crucial functions within Sinbad, the product design team as well as the product management team, I'd now like to pass the mic on to JP.
Thanks, Jackie. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Hello, my name is Vishnu JP. I'm a software engineering manager from Sinbad Technology Division. Our goal is to deliver and maintain working application with the best quality. Now that you have heard from Maya and Bagus about creative design and how product requirements are built to solve a real user problem, I'm excited to share more about how our tech team operates. But first, let's talk about our team formation. So you can see in the left screen, we have two subdivisions in tech. One, development are the combination between product manager, designer, software engineer, and quality engineer. And we have kind of like 10 crew. And second is platform and support. That's combination between DevOps, architecture, and architect, app support and IT help desk. And we have 5 teams. So if you take a look in the middle, it's more like our cycle give of work. You can see from the outside is a list of product features and many more to come. So in the inside, there was our crew and the team that will handle all the product and the system. The crew will be assigned to one or more features. So after the cycle, the crew will have a chance to explore others only features. What is value with this? Engineer will learn or know about Sinbad end-to-end product and ecosystem, right? And all engineers will be involved and implement in many automation system and tools. Next is let's talk about our ecosystem, right? If you can see on the screen, our ecosystem look like a busy town, right? There is a foundation below for our environment and infrastructure, and also there is a business running above is our flow in development. And it will meet in the same line to produce and maintain a solid working application. If you know, it's like a cycle of agile DevOps, right? There's cover value in this cycle. I think if I combine it into one, is the planning and development. So every crew member had the opportunity to give insight and feedback, and also you will be involved in rapid flow, something like that, and to track and deliver our apps in time. So, and that you can see we have a proper testing life cycle, automation API, AT UI, and most of the pyramid testing that involved, you know. And then also the last time is powerful release cycle. Last but not least, what is the value of this? It's been 1 year. We are successfully and productive working from home because we had a highly remote workspace and environment. So we will keep doing it in the future. So in the next slide, I will explain you about our technology. You know all of this technology backend, front end, like Node.js, Golang, React Native for mobile, React and Angular also for web, and all the NoSQL and SQL stuff, right? So we also creating LTDB communication in our system, like so you can see all the Kafka, Docker, and Kubernetes. What are the technology built up? It's an application, a for application of Sinbad. There is Sinbad apps, agent app, and Sinbad Search Center is admin panel is a web app. So what next? Next, we are revamping our microservice and we are creating a new ecosystem for micro front end and also for iOS development. Many amazing projects will be coming soon, so stay tuned. And next, with all that being said, running business ecosystem, upcoming project, how do our new engineers get and or just got rotate know all of that stuff, right? I got you. The answer is simple. You just follow the few event and steps. First, you have onboarding, a proper onboarding. So this come from core division, business, product, and tech. And also you have internal onboarding for your team as well. And second, we have organized documentation and easy setup environment. Let's say you just read the documentation and do the configuration itself. And the third is sharing session and communication. Every week we have a Tech Friday. So all of the tech gather together to share everything about a new technology or modern technology that will craft out for our next solution. And then the last is we have a training course that, and you can get your certification on your training or your course, something like DB College, AWS, and so forth. And for all of this is to ensure that our products are delivered and optimized manner for our customer, and we have built a strong culture within the technology of division itself. And Simbad know, so you have to follow the process and stay informed with to help with their role and the future development. I think that's it, Jackie. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, JP. So now that we've heard about design, product, as well as tech within Sinbad, we wanted to share with you what a journey for all our sailors looks like across the company. So at Sinbad, we are dedicated to creating an exciting and enriching work environment for all our sailors. We believe that sailors' well-being as well as developmental support are crucial in their journey with us. So with Sinbad being a relatively young 3-year company, that means we've also been attracting young, innovative sailors with our sailors' average age around 28 years old. We are also committed to creating an equal gender ratio amongst female and males alike. And even though we've been working remotely, we find creative ways to connect with our 150 sailors through activities such as monthly bondings, Friday hangouts, Tales of Sinbad speaker series, and of course, local Indonesian activities and celebrations. Adapting to the new normal, at Sinbad, we also offer a hybrid work environment, allowing sailors the flexibility to work from home and in our new office in Menara Duta Kuningan soon. We also offer private health insurance as well allowance for reading classes. Mental health counseling is also available as we believe that sailors' overall well-being is as important as the well-being of the company. And of course, because we are a B2B company working directly with numerous FMCG suppliers, we encourage all our sailors to actually purchase from our product catalog at wholesale prices so that they themselves can experience the products for themselves. Even more, we acknowledge that all sailors should be given the support and opportunity for growth. We provide coaching and mentoring sessions to guide sailors' development and help them harness their strengths. So, Sinbad conducts 2 performance appraisals a year, which means that it gives them the possibility for progression. We also encourage internships within the company to give almost graduating or fresh graduates the opportunity to learn from our esteemed and experienced team members and progress in their career. Last but not least, we have developed a sailor management trainee program, which is a 24-month long course designed especially for high potential graduates. So there are 4 tracks available, which is either software engineering, product management, commercial, or platform operations. In each of these tracks, sailor trainees will rotate through 4 different subdivisions of their chosen expertise. So, for example, if you become one of the selected few trainees to join our program and you choose the software engineering track, you will then experience 6 months in software quality, 6 months in software development, 6 months in infrastructure operations, then the remaining last 5 months in database admin, as well as preparing for your final project. So trainees will have the opportunity to have monthly mentoring sessions with one of our C-level or VP team members, as well as participate in quarterly workshops to build your soft and hard skills. So this program allows trainees to optimize their learning and development in their chosen expertise and accelerate your career progression. Our goal essentially is to groom trainees towards a full-time employment and future leader position within Sinbad. So, of course, now that we've shared some background about here, us in Sinbad, we then, of course, just had to ask our fellow sailors, do they enjoy working in Sinbad?
We do. We do.
We do.
Thank you, Jackie. And if we can go back to the presentation briefly. So dear hackers, now that you've heard more about who we are and what we do and some of the exciting opportunities that we offer, we can imagine that there's quite some information that you heard. So if you'd like to learn more about us, you can connect with us through the following channels. And we're also going to be here right now for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now. And Jackie, JP, and myself will be here for a bit.
So I do see some questions out there in the chat. If we can help share. Someone asked.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I'll hop with the questions part. So we do have a few questions
And
So
thank you
the
for
first
those.
question is from Natasha. What's the main thing you look for in an employee or for an intern, for example?
So Kendrick, just to see if we caught that question correctly, what is the main thing that we look for in an employee or an intern, or are we talking about
Yeah,
the management trainee program? Because
I think for all three, I think.
okay, perhaps I can answer from the angle of a management trainee, right? Which is going to be a new program that we're going to launch in the new year. So it will be candidates who have, let's say, a minimum bachelor degree from a top tier Indonesian university or overseas, and fresh grad, probably max about 2 years experience. And as this is a program where we're really trying to groom you into a leadership position, right? If you have experience in your studies or outside, where it shows that you've shown leadership, business initiatives, and that during the interview, you can demonstrate a growth mindset, adaptability, and resilience, strong work ethic, and be able to communicate and fluent in English and Bahasa Indonesia. I think that would be for the
Hmm.
management training program.
Okay. So the next question we have is from Brian. What do you find the most meaningful in your job and working for Sinbad, I would assume?
So I can help answer that question, and just only speaking from personal experience. So my role as project management officer, what's most meaningful is really finding ways to work with different teams, finding ways to improve as well the livelihood, the work environment for our fellow sailors. But then as well, I have a kind of fortunate opportunity to not only work within internally, but as well see how we can improve our product. So engaging with our customers, whether it be retailers or traditional merchants, and as well as suppliers. So trying to find and understand, what are the issues? How can we help through technology? And then like having that introduced into the product. So having to go into the field and really understanding how that impacts their everyday work life is really meaningful to myself, especially if individual merchants will then come back to us and say, you helped with our growth, you make my everyday work easier, with using an app versus the old school way of relying on salesmen coming once a month. But yeah, that's, I think, my personal experience. Hope that answers your question.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to share about their own personal experience?
JP, you want to share a little bit about the tech side? And seeing that, we obviously have a huge tech audience here today.
Yeah. Okay. I think Jackie almost covered all of point, right? So then the question is, which um, Somali, right? What do you find most meaningful in your job,
Uh,
right? Yeah. So
yes.
the meaningful in your job. So I think the meaningful of my job is more like it's come from my heart, right? So uh, so actually, if I do something, I'm passionate on doing something. For example, I do a coding, I do a testing or something else, and make a solution from it. It makes me proud. And also, my solution can be implemented on all the ecosystem that we have, something like that. So the fun part would be uh, I'm bringing something to the whole ecosystem. Let's say a B2B ecosystem. That's what makes me proud. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps I'll round off. Thank you, Jackie and JP. So I'm also part of the people's team, and I think the challenge that we relish at people team is how we're growing this company. And Jackie already mentioned the importance of our sailors, and as we're continuously growing, how do we not only keep people happy, but that they also promote us externally, that we could create an environment where people are challenged and supported to develop themselves. So not only Sinbad, and to have a culture where as we are now, I think Jackie mentioned our average age is 28, but we have some people that are a bit older. So how can we create a culture where people are looking forward to work, but also play hard with each other, right? Jackie mentioned a couple of activities that we do, and I think there's one of the questions that I see here as well about what is your favorite work tradition. We do some great activities that really show cohesion. We've been doing that remotely, but now we also look forward to going back to the office and doing it hybridly. So yeah. Thank you for whoever asked the question about
awesome.
What makes your day meaningful.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next question then. We have another question from Natasha. What do you see as the most challenging aspect of your job? I guess the context would be what's the most challenging aspect of growing Simba to what it is today, and what do you expect there to be challenges in the future?
Okay, so we mentioned that there's a huge potential in Indonesia, right? The FMCG market being the fourth largest industry, and how we're trying to create value for our stakeholders. So of course, if we want to grow, we need to get more customers. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that our current customers are happy, right? That means that we continuously need to evolve our product, right? I think that's where JP comes in. At the same time, we also need to make sure that our services, such as customer support, right, and business development, are doing their part. That our data department is able to collect data and break it down and provide useful information for us how we can grow. So that is a challenge. I mean, if we just speak from a organization, let's say manpower wise, we'd like to grow double by the end of next year. So yes, fantastic that we grew 1,000% in the last 3 years, and we celebrate that. However, let's look at the next challenge and how can we grow manpower wise double. And that creates its own challenges, but also opportunities.
Awesome. So we do have a question we do have a lot of questions about the internship program. Is there a specific requirement for the internship program?
For the internship program, is there a separate requirement?
Yeah.
We currently have a couple of trainees, and I think Jackie, actually, you have a trainee right now, right?
Yeah. So for us, internships are an opportunity to, catapult or, fast forward into your career. And we actually encourage lots of junior and senior university students or fresh grads to join us for the internship. For us, a requirement, of course, we don't look at your past work experience. We understand that, you may be young and possibly students still. What's important for us is really the eagerness to learn, the ability to share, and have that curiosity. I myself have a marketing intern actually from Garuda Hacks, so I'm really great to be working with her. And what I enjoy most about working with interns is that they have a lot of insight. You are still studying, you are still in school, you have fresh theory ideas. So don't be scared to share those. It may be a challenge if you've never, worked in a formal setting or even in a company before. But first and foremost is how you communicate, present yourself is important, and as well how you stay hungry and curious to keep learning. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. We do have an interesting question from Angelique. Is there a special story on why you call them sailors, like your employees?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, Sinbad, if any of you know Sinbad, honestly, I think Oki can tell the story better.
But is it, well, I mean, Sinbad, he's a character, isn't he? And maybe you know him from the cartoons at Disney. So, what is Sinbad? Is a person who's a merchant and he traveled, right? And what do? We trade in FMCG goods, and we have a vision that we want to uplift Indonesia, and we have to do that by traveling around Indonesia, uniting people, um, exposing them to products. Sinbad was somebody that also brought people together, and we understand that from a company culture perspective, we have a very diverse, team of sailors. So I think that would explain where Sinbad comes from. But
Yeah,
we
and
don't have a magic
specifically,
carpet, you know.
and specifically sailors because without Sinbad and his crew of fellow sailors, how is he gonna travel the seven seas and conquer different voyages? So we pride ourselves in this strong kind of culture, I will have to say, um, and so we all do associate with that metaphor and imagery of Sinbad and their sailors.
I see, interesting. So we have quite a specific question from Sugeng Priyanto. Can I apply for management trainee program in the software engineering track if I have a bachelor's degree but not in the computer science field?
Uh, well, it's possible. We also have a commercial division, right? So you could look at business development and distribution, category management. So you don't have to be tech per se for this. Yeah. I don't know what degree do you have, Sugeng. I mean, maybe reach out to us, to me, or you have an email here, peopleteam.sinbad, and why don't you send your CV, and I'll gladly hook up with you to discuss. Or anybody who's in this presentation right now, if you'd like to have a more personal touch, please get in touch, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, so next question. Are there any like special traditions or culture that you find only at Sinbad?
Are there any specific traditions that are really Sinbad owned? Uh,
Yeah.
well, I would say we mentioned a couple. We have the Tales of Sinbad, right? I'm sure you don't find that outside of us. It's a monthly event where either an internal or sometimes an external speaker comes and shares a range of topics. We've had this year some 5 key financial principles that help you in your personal life. We've had mindfulness, self-care. We've had data. We've had communication skills. And this month, we're actually having the importance of written communication. So that's one event. We also have Fridays, which are bi-weekly on Friday. And because now we live in a remote environment, we can no longer, after work, grab a drink or a snack after the office. So at 6 o'clock, there's a virtual room, and it's not compulsory, but we do have huge turnouts. And anybody from C-level to VPs to trainees, they come in and we chat about a variety about things. But it really is about getting to know each other more on a personal level. I think that's been a very popular event. We've introduced that, I think, at the end of June. And it's running well. So those 2 events are really definitely something that we do. As much as Jackie also said that we, respect some Indonesian traditions. We had the Independence Day event, but we also had an Abang None event for those that are familiar. And the Abang None winner are officially, for 1 year, this official Sinbad Abang and the official Sinbad None. They carry that title, and they won a prize. Yeah,
So
to start off.
yeah. So just to be clear, so you have Sinbad Abang from. I assume one of your employees is the Sinbad Abang.
Yes, so we
I
had a
see.
contest where we asked our sailors to dress up as best as they could as an abang and a none, and they were voted, and there were a unanimous winner, for the abang and the none, and for 1 year they get to carry that title.
Can we know like the name of the winner?
Can we know the name of the winner?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, it's from my division.
Well, go ahead,
All of
JP.
the winner,
Ah,
all of the winner is from my division because my division is carry a lot of team and member, right? Number one for Abang is Hafiz is Muhammad Hafiz
ah,
Istihori. He's a senior software architect and also be leading our architect team in the future. And second one is our app support lead called Cynthia for None. Congrats again.
yeah, sounds fun. So we have a question from one of our participants who is still a high schooler from Renadi. Do you guys accept high schoolers as interns? Is there like a specific program and mentoring program perhaps for high schoolers?
We do have traineeships or internships for high school students. We actually had one over the summer with some students from Jakarta Intercultural School. We understand that for high school students, the duration that they're available is probably a bit shorter because it's usually in their holidays. But we can curate to that. We can tailor to that. So if you have interest, please reach out to us.
Ah, I see. So we actually have a question from one of the members of the Garuda Hacks team. So, Sinbad is not the only like product in the Indonesian market for like B2B e-commerce. So what makes Sinbad special compared to others in the market?
JP, what makes our product better than our competitors?
What makes our technology better than the others? So I think you already know all of things regarding all the modern technology, right? So the best part is here we are keep optimizing and keep improving our ecosystem from end to end that you already look in the slide, and we are keeping optimizing and I think in the future we have couple upcoming projects that will be on the Sinbad B2B system. But for me, example B2B is not like a commerce uh, system platform. B2B is like a more diverse of a flow of e-commerce itself. So many things are are many features are into it, and I think the most valuable thing on our tools or feature is our supplier tools and engaging to our third party, something like that. I hope it
Okay.
answers the question.
I can add to that as well. So,
Yeah.
from a business aspect or perspective as well, we definitely believe Sinbad believes in building a sustainable business model. We go from a top-down approach that makes sure that we're utilizing all the resources that we can for our customers. So, we want to ensure that all our platforms are comprehensive and immersive enough for our suppliers to ensure that they can migrate whatever products that they trust us with, and that this goes directly to our merchants and retailers without any buffered additional costs. We want to ensure that we're giving the best price possible to retailers and merchants so that this really helps them directly in their business, in their livelihood, because at the beginning of the presentation, Oki mentioned the FMCG industry in Indonesia is the fourth largest, right? As you know, commerce and e-commerce is so big in Indonesia nowadays. So while there is a lot of competition, we want to go against that with without additional costs, without additional expenses that burdens then either the supplier or the retailer. So this is why we do have different platforms catered to different users. So a platform for our retailers, a platform for our suppliers, a platform for our salesmen, and so on. But they're all essentially integrated. So this is for us our kind of competitive edge. And on top of that, we want to ensure that we build as much trust in this supply chain so that, of course, any new businesses, brands, and as well as merchants can rely on us for anything throughout their everyday proposition and selling.
Okay. So, next question. You are using a React Native. What you needed to build apps is cross-platform network framework benefits your company more? Yeah, it's a bit of a
So,
technical question. I hope that's fine.
okay, yes, thank you, Henrik. I will try to answer this. So, when picking a language, it's not like you're picking what you want to eat, right? So, in a big company like ourselves, like on technology, so we have to look on a few of aspects. For example, when we pick a language, first we have to look down what are the community available for the language itself. For example, our developer used to know about JavaScript or something else. So we pick on this community first, and then after our internal language, our internal member know uh, the language itself, and then we next it we will try to look on the specific aspect about how the language or how the documentation and sharing stuff. Is it available outside? And after that, then we pick the language itself. So in this one, our resource most likely is a JavaScript guide, right? So regarding this point, so we will pick JavaScript and also the timeline itself to deliver the product. But nevertheless, in the future, we are looking for the native guy because we are building the end-to-end stuff. And yeah, I'll be hoping to see in 22 we are working with the native and multi-threading stuff, something like that. I hope this answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, I think that answers the question. So our next question is from Mira. How do you manage communication among teams in the tech division, especially? And what is the most challenging part in the development process in Sinbad? Because I think you have 4 products. That's pretty impressive, seeing as you're
Mhm.
a young company, I think.
So yeah, let me answer. How to manage communication among team tech division, especially, and what is the most challenging part? So the first thing first, we kind of like built a workflow for our working environment, such as first step like planning and do development and testing and so on and so forth. So we built this standardization for the workflow, and every step have their own event or communication. For example, we have a daily stand up, we have an internal discussion before we start the sprint. We have a pre-sprint planning. If we go previously, we have a pre-sprint planning and sprint planning. And also, as an engineering manager like myself, we kind of like orchestration all of the entity of a tech aspect inside our team. So we kind of like bringing bricks into full building in infrastructure, something like that. So the most challenging stuff, yes, this must be a building the bricks itself. So make the to ensure the building is more sustainably more availability to the end user. This more likely we have to need a solid foundation for our system, and then we need also a proper workflow and also how to prevent all the incident happen, something like that. I hope this answers the question.
I see, I see. We have a question from Bernardo. When will internship applications open? Does it open all year round or there are specific times maybe?
If we're talking about internships, it's open all year round, and depends on availability, or we can create positions. If we're talking about the management training program, we're looking into creating 2 batches. And as we're looking for high performing potential, there will be about 6 to 10 people that we will accept per batch. Right? And we're looking into early 2022 and in fall 2022. So, but yeah, applications are open. You can share. Please share today, please.
Okay. So we have a question. This is from my. So I think this is a question that's useful for our audience. So our participants, they want to be problem solvers. They want to be creators, basically. And the world of startups, it's all about finding a problem in the world and creating a solution by creating a product from it. So I would like to know what problem Sinbad is trying to solve with their products. You have 4 products, right? So what problems are you trying to solve with them?
Yeah, so if I can just jump in there. I think the big picture problem that we're trying to solve within Sinbad is really how to eliminate the different steps or, people in between the supply chain industry so that it becomes more efficient and optimal from the supplier or distributor side as well as to the merchant side. Just to explain, if some of you may or may not know, traditionally and in lots of parts of Indonesia, the warung, toko kelontong, and pasar, they still rely on salesmen to come, once every 2 weeks or maybe once a month to then do a manual input of how many orders they would like to purchase of product A, B, and C. And this, of course, gets passed on to the procurement and goes back to the supplier to then arrange the distribution. And then they have to arrange for delivery. And then this is without, talking about the process of invoicing and payments. And then imagine, that process in itself takes a lot of time. There's room for error, margin for mistakes, and so on. So I think that's the kind of big picture problem that Sinbad is trying to solve. But as you know, with the way that technology is moving now these days, we just want to ensure that we have all the right tools for each of these intermediaries. Yeah, does that answer your question, Kendrick?
Well, that's a good answer, I think. Yeah, I think that's a so next. Yeah. So we do have a question from Lisa. So sorry about that. I think my signal is breaking up. Uh, is Sinbad an impact business or social enterprise?
I guess we lost our moderator. So to answer Riza, we are a for-profit business, but of course we do have investors that we work with as well as partners. Um, as you know, we do work with suppliers and distributors, principals as well. So they are our partners, but we are essentially still a for-profit business.
As we're waiting for Kendrick to come back, if there are any questions, you can leave them in the comments. Or if we have overlooked any, perhaps you could just re-ask your question.
Hi, so Kendrick's signal is gone, so I'm here basically to replace him. I'm so sorry for that. So we still have time for more questions. And so let me just okay, sorry. Um okay, so I feel like you haven't answered this question from Mira. It's how do you guys manage communication amongst like the business in itself, and especially I think she's most interested in the tech division, so I guess Wisnu would be the best to answer this. And what is the most challenging part as a tech manager in the development process in Sinbad?
Yeah, I think I already answered it, but maybe,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
okay.
maybe it's okay. I'll try to answer again. Regarding how to manage communication among the team division, especially, and what is the most challenging part in development. So the communication itself, we create a foundation like a workflow, right? A workflow of DLC, SDLC, and so on and so forth. So this workflow have some entity like a daily send uh, internal discussion meeting and so on and so forth. And the next part is what is the most challenging part in the development process. So we like a bit building a brick, right, inside of 10 crew development. So we are creating an end-to-end flow for the B2B platform from the first until the beginning to when the product or the application is published to the end user, something like that. So make this process from manual to automatically is kind of like uh, taking bricks in little bricks and make it a strong working building, something like that. I hope this answer the question.
Okay, I guess we still have time for one more question. Um, so there's a question up above by Quackling Bunny, and her question is, if as an intern, like as an intern, who would they be closely working with? I guess is what they're most interested in. Like, will they be closely working with any of you guys? You guys seems like really nice people, so I guess they're very interested in that as well. Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on which team you arrive, but for sure, you'll be welcomed very warmly, and you'll be assigned a buddy who can probably, in the beginning, give you more insights to what is expected in the particular internship that you're looking for. But we're very decentralized. We'll have like daily stand-ups or weekly meetings. You'll be meeting your team leader, and as we mentioned, on the Fridays, you'll even meet C-level and VPs. But on a day-to-day operation, you'll be with your buddy to start off with, and depending on the duration, if there's time for you to be more independent, yeah. But you'll meet the whole team for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that is all for the questions today. If you have anything else you'd like to say, this is like your time to do so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
can we pull up our presentation?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for participating today. We're so excited that you're participating in this Garuda Hackathon. I'm sure you all have great ideas and projects to share with us and then as well your fellow judges. But for everyone excited or enthused about tech, please ensure to participate this Saturday, where our fellow colleagues Pradita Utama and William will be delivering a workshop on how to deliver a testable solution. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you all so much. And maybe Oki and JP, if you have any closing remarks.
Yeah, thank you, hackers, for joining us today. We know you've got a couple exciting days ahead. Please reach out if you have any more questions. We'd like to thank Kendrick, Ryan, Natasha, and the Garuda team. Wish you all the best the next couple of days as well. And hopefully we get to meet some of you virtually and after that in person. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much everyone for being here. It was a really good talk. We will definitely put up your contact information in Instagram, so don't forget to follow us there. We'll tag everyone, and once again, thank you. Yeah. Hi guys. So don't forget to stay tuned. We still have 2 more speakers today. Yeah, stay tuned and be right back.
Okay, thank you guys so much for waiting through the intermission. Yeah, so we'll just get right to it. Next up, we would like to invite our very special guest, the country manager of Ice House, Nathan Grief. Hi, Nathan. I see you on the screen. Nathan
Hi.
is the country manager for Ice House Indonesia, which is the first Google certified developer in Southeast Asia. So prior to this, Nathan was the Telstra country operations manager and chief of staff for Telkom Telstra. So he graduated from Monash University with a master's degree in business. So without further ado, I think we can welcome Nathan with a big round of applause. And yeah, as a reminder, guys, you will have the opportunity to submit your questions for Nathan by typing in your questions in the chat box below. Yeah, so you can send your questions like anytime during the presentation, and we'll just collect these and we'll definitely address them at the end of the presentation. So stay tuned till the end. Right, Nathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you so much again for having me today. Let me just share my screen. Let me know if you can see this. Okay. So is that now clear to everyone? I hope so. Excellent. So I'll just get straight into it. So thank you again for the introduction earlier. So as mentioned, I am Nathan, the country manager here at Ice House. And the first thing that a lot of our viewers might be asking is, who is Ice House? We don't necessarily have the brand of some of our other sponsors today. And that really is because we consider ourselves, somewhat to be the brains behind some of the biggest apps here in Indonesia and throughout the world. So we are not a direct-to-consumer brand. We are an agency that often big brands call on in order to really help scale and improve their mobile applications. So this is something that we've been doing now for the past 8 years. Despite what you might think with my Australian accent, we are very much an Indonesia first company. So ICE is actually an acronym for Indonesia Center of Excellence. So founded here in South Jakarta, based here now as it's a little bit dark, you can see. We have more than 60 team members here based in Indonesia, but our global footprint actually expands far beyond that. And this has really come out of a lot of the demand we've been seeing from customers locally. So we have teams that we work with in China, Singapore, Australia, as well as the Netherlands. A quick overview of how we kind of came to be. So back when we started the company 8 years ago, the idea of using agile software development was not really very well known as it is today. But this is really something that we've refined over the years, and it really starts as a base of helping customers understand that the old way of building software, which is to say that you gather all your requirements up front, you hope that nothing changes in the market, and 6 months later, bam, you got a rocket ship. We know that the reality is very, very different. In fact, we see markets changing so quickly, new technologies being introduced, and users also being very difficult to please and often changing their preferences and deleting applications, that the rate of mobility development has to be a lot faster. So here in IceHouse, we use this MVP approach, which basically requires breaking down a single application into far quicker releases that we do every 2 weeks in our sprints. And so what we give our customers at the end of the day is a working component of the application. We're not looking to build everything from the beginning, but we're looking to refine and develop each of the features within the app and deploy them as a working product that we can test with real users, get that feedback, and improve on the next iteration. This is just a little bit about our history in terms of some of the customers that we've worked with over the years. So as it was mentioned before, we were the very first Google certified developer in Southeast Asia. This accreditation continued with Google for about 4 years, up until recently last year, Google actually launched their very first data center here in Jakarta. And since then, the focus has really changed for Google to think less about mobile and more about the bigger picture of how they build applications in a cloud environment. As we've seen in other markets, the adoption of cloud has really changed what it is that businesses can do, how more efficiently they can run, and how more efficiently they can reach new markets and customers. So we were very excited by the opportunity to work with Google and actually received our certification as a Google Cloud partner just last year. Over the years, we worked with a number of different clients. You'll see when we first started Icehouse, actually a lot of the demand was coming from outside Indonesia. So the rate of mobile adoption is nowhere where it is today. So one of the first customers that we worked with was Paramount Pictures in the US. And at the time, we basically used developers here in Indonesia to build a gamified experience of going and seeing the new Star Trek Into Darkness movie. So rather than a normal application where you just view a trailer, the idea here is that we wanted to create an experience where people who are very enthusiastic about the Star Trek brand could join as a cadet, and then they would complete a number of missions in order to become a Starfleet commander. So some of those missions ranged from geofence locations where they just had to check in to their local cinema that was showing the movie. We had pre-recorded sound bites, so if they were listening to the trailer, they would also gather points, and image recognition technology. So if they actually scanned billboards and movie posters, that would be another way for them to get points before seeing the movie. So this kind of hype and way of building an application actually had Icehouse featured at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2014, which is the biggest electronics event hosted annually in Las Vegas every year. That created quite a buzz back here in Indonesia, and one of the very first customers we picked up was Gojek. Now, Gojek at the time was nowhere near the size that it is today, but what they did prove in the market from a very early point in 2015 was that they could take something simple as a mobile application and build an entire business around a mobile-first strategy. Now, this idea, whilst it seems common today, was very unique at the time because most businesses today are actually looking at a mobile second strategy, right? So they might have existing banks, infrastructure, retail outlets, and now they're trying to play catch up and actually build a mobile experience that really works for their customers and is enough to challenge some of the unicorns that we see today. So one of the logos that, of course, we get asked the most about is Gojek. So back in 2015, we worked with Gojek using our model of an MVP approach first. For those who don't know, it's a minimal viable product. And really, we set aside building the very first versions of 3 of their applications. Now, GoTix at the time was the largest ticketing platform, and it was really one of the first applications that allowed users to book an event, in this case, go into the cinema, and they could actually then pay using their GoPay balance, receive a QR code and scan it when they arrived at the cinemas. Now, this type of user journey, I think a lot of us take today for granted, but it really started with the very first launch of GoTix. Since that time, I think the platform has grown to actually add many other types of events like movies, concerts, cultural events, but obviously with the pandemic, they've been a little bit more focused on virtual type events. The other application that we worked on was GoBox. So for those who have used GoBox, maybe when you're moving house, the big difference between this and say GoSend is that we had to really think about how we customize the types of drivers and vehicles available depending on what it is that the user needed to move from A to B. This is quite a complex system, and it meant that we had to actually build both the driver application on Android, the consumer app on iOS and Android, as well as a backend web console to actually manage the allocation of drivers in real time. Now, the final application that we did work on as well was Go Busway. Now, many of you are probably asking, what on earth is Go Busway? This application, I think, really is a testament to kind of Gojek's way of actually driving lean products and trying to understand very quickly what works and what doesn't. So the idea at the time was that they would publish bus times in real time and you could track your bus. Now, if you look at the rest of the Gojek ecosystem, public buses do not make Gojek anywhere near as much value as on-demand services, of which they own, have far more control over. So this product was actually sunsetted, I think, in less than a year. But nonetheless, it does go to show that they're not afraid, to actually experiment with different products to really find and generate their market fit and then scale once they've proven that viability. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Now, as the topic suggests, this is really about trying to understand, how can you or any other company consider pivoting or adapting during some of the unique challenges that a pandemic does offer us. Now, in ISAS, I think we were very lucky in the sense that our business and the way that we support our customers doesn't require us to be in a physical office. Despite what you might see, the reason I'm in a physical office is because my apartment has really poor Wi-Fi at the moment, unfortunately, so we can't get around that. But all of our systems and services that we use are all based in the cloud. So we've, of course, been a Google Cloud partner, have really taken advantage of that. Other businesses, such as Bluebird, really faced unique challenges last year in the sense that everybody was stuck at home. So, of course, nobody is taking taxis, which put a lot of pressure on drivers who still need to earn an income. It put a lot of pressure as well as customers when they did use a Bluebird. They obviously didn't want to be using cash because a lot of the Bluebirds also had the plastic covers. So cash often wasn't even an option. And the other thing as well is that they wanted to access more than just a Bluebird service. And for some people actually taking long trips to visit family, Bluebird wasn't really a viable option. So other things like Goldenbird, which didn't have a booking service, or even Silverbird for some of their premium customers. And so the way that we tackled some of these challenges is we made and worked with Bluebird to really think differently about not trying to compete with Gojek or Grab, because there's no way on a pure price perspective you can actually ever get to a position where you're going to be cheaper than a ride-hailing service. So rather focus on what it is that the Bluebird brand is famous for, and that's really the trust that Bluebird drivers have and the professionalism and consistency and quality of their cars. So in doing that and to really highlight it, what we did was actually combine the Bluebird, Silverbird, and Goldenbird service all within one, we call it a super transport app, if you will. The second thing is we wanted to give consumers a lot more certainty over what they were going to pay. So at the time, because of the dispatch system, there was a lot of variance in terms of what people were going to pay. So adding a fixed cost feature really gave people a lot more assurance in exactly how much that trip was going to cost them and some of the differences between each of the different tier level services that they had. Of course, you had the option to book now or book later, but more importantly came to the actual cash transactions. So in the 9 months that we were working with Bluebird last year, we made sure to actually integrate and work with a lot of the local wallet providers, like Dana, like Lingua, GoPay, Ovo. So all of these wallets you can actually turn on via the app and actually see your balance and assign payment from any one of those apps within the same trip. Now, the other thing, however, that it didn't solve for was if, and more likely than not, people were actually just hailing down a taxi on the side of the street. And if they didn't have cash in them, that would pose quite a problem. So by introducing a cashless payment where people could hail down a taxi, a physical taxi, and pay using the app if they didn't have cash on them, this is also an added bonus that in particular really helps a lot of people who might be traveling for business. So in the old days, you were given this paper voucher that you'd have to fill in by hand. You'd have to say the reason for the travel, the point of the pickup and the point of the drop-off. it's very cumbersome, and also meant that you would then have to scan, print, and lodge a receipt of that ticket. That all now is transformed completely digitally using the Easy Ride cashless payment vouchers. And now the final thing, beyond combining multiple services and offering different types of payments, was really to focus on the drivers. So as you know, being a taxi driver in Indonesia is not the easiest job, and it's even more difficult if nobody's taking taxis during the middle of a pandemic. So what we offered was a new feature called Bird Kirim for package delivery. It basically acknowledged the fact that despite us all being stuck in our houses, some people still had the means and had the requirement to actually transport different packages and goods from A to B, whether it was sending a gift to a loved one, or even just sending basic office documents if you were working remotely. And so the Bluebird drivers, for the first time, could now act as a courier and use their vehicles to actually transport around packages on behalf of customers. So this is an example of when you think of a traditional taxi company, how is it that they can consider evolving their business using mobile to really set themselves apart from some of their competitors. And this outcome, in terms of the 9 months of development, actually resulted in Bluebird increasing their monthly active users by 3 times over. So we consider this quite a success. Now, before you start building an app, one of the most important things to understand firstly is exactly where you are in your app journey. So for most customers who have an established brand, it's fairly easy for them to actually leverage mobile technology because they don't have to so much work on proving the market, more as understanding their customers. So if you have an established brand, say like Bluebird, in this case, what we had to do was really define and design. So when we talk about definition, what we're trying to understand is where is the intersection between the objectives of the business and the objectives of your users. If we can understand that sweet spot, that really makes for a great starting point to design a mobile app service that really meets both goals for both the user and the business who is invested in building the application. Now, implementation is something that I said before. We use Agile in terms of 2-week sprints. So this gives us a lot more control over the development process to prioritize, to add new requirements, to deprioritize other requirements, and also take in user feedback all throughout the development process before we actually push an app to production. Now, once we are in production, the very first thing we need to do is establish exactly what are the KPIs or metrics we're going to be using to actually understand whether or not our app has been successful in production. Now, for this, analytics is extremely important because it really then gives you a basis of understanding what the amount of downloads are, what the engagement is, what the number of transactions are, and we're able to map that out relative to different releases that we have. So we can see in real time if the improvements that we're making on the application are really making a difference in terms of user growth. And now the final step, and I came to this one last, is because some customers in our experience have wanted to really branch out and develop new products or new services that maybe there isn't a market fit for yet. So before, and we see this actually happen quite a lot, where before a customer has actually proved a market fit, they might actually rush to implement something without first proving or disproving whether or not it's something that actually people want. So a design sprint, this was first actually introduced, I think, by Google. It was Google Ventures, actually, and there's a gentleman by the name of Jake Knapp, who was the founder of the design sprint. And we actually worked with his team just last year to actually incorporate the design sprint as part of our practice. Really involves a process of ideation, prototyping, and then testing an idea, all within the span of 5 days. Now, the reason that they compress it to 5 days is that, really limiting the time and resources of the team really forces us to focus on what matters most for the users, right? Because often We find that if you spent 6 months deliberating over creating a requirements document, often you end up adding far more than what you really need for your end users. So this is a very simple way of testing an idea before you push it to the developers. Now, when you're developing an app, the very first thing to consider is really what you're up against. So this is research that was done by Google a number of years ago. And it really hasn't moved in terms of the frequency and the number of applications that most users have. So before you actually think about creating something new, the first thing you need to understand is that, much like our ability to take in information, so if you look at the short-term memory of humans, I think is 7 plus or minus 2 items at a time. So when you're providing information, it has to be extremely succinct. And the same goes for when you're providing an application. It has to be relevant and also has to deal with some of the restrictions we have in terms of capacity on our mobiles. Now, if you're building applications in emerging markets like Indonesia, this becomes even more important because, if you look at the majority of mobile devices here, I think over 90% are Android devices. And a lot of them vary in terms of their capacity, their CPU usage, and some of the features that are native on the device as well. So the competition is stiff. And when you are actually thinking of a new application, the first thing to consider is what is it on somebody's phone or an existing app you might be looking to displace, or have you really created something entirely new that's going to be valuable enough that people would consider adding as a 36th app? And for that, the reason has to be extremely compelling. So I'm going to give some examples of companies who have done this very successfully, focusing on just 5 key areas of human psychology and how we interact with applications. And the final piece here is that 52% of apps are used weekly. So for a lot of applications out there, the cost of development is really significant. So improving a return on that investment often means engagement and how often people are actually opening and using your application. So of the 35 apps on somebody's phone, they're using barely half of those at least once a week. And for those of the core, most of you will know which apps they are, and a lot of them have very similar characteristics. So when driving user engagement, these are 5 things that were basically profiled by Envision a number of years ago. So for any designers on the call, you're probably familiar with the platform Envision. These are 5 attributes that they looked at when they asked people a very simple question in terms of what are your most used apps and why. And what they did with this research was then compile what they believed was a list of really kind of common themes that we as humans yearn for, regardless of using an application or even using a desktop. And the first thing is that everybody wants to feel liked and important. If the lockdown and being in isolation has taught us anything, it's that we are definitely naturally social creatures. We all seek validation and we all seek affirmation. And the easiest way of doing this and the most prevalent is definitely the invention of the likes system. So this is most commonly used in Twitter and a lot of the social media platforms that a lot of us use every day. But more and more, we see it even introduced as a rating scheme, right? So if anyone's ever used a ride-hailing service, some of the information provided there and the conversations, even with drivers, are becoming, more focused on, driving that 5-star rating and getting those likes. So it really increases our status in the application. The second is that we definitely do get addicted to the anticipation of a reward. And I must stress here that the key word here is a variable award. Now, what this means is that, we as humans, if we know that a reward is predictable or it's guaranteed, or we know it's going to happen at exact time and day, it becomes less and less appealing over time. And we actually get somewhat complacent with receiving that. So the use of notifications in this instance is extremely important, but Some people have to be very, very careful not to overdo it with notifications. I think there's been use cases of many applications like, trying to think, Clubhouse was one where I think their overuse of notifications early, you've seen the engagement drop significantly in what was, at first a lot of hype in terms of a radio-based social platform. But other applications that do this extremely well, for any Indonesian people dialing in today, you're probably familiar. I had to give a shout out to one of the other sponsors, ticket.com. But also GoFood and Tokopedia. So if you've ever downloaded the Gojek app, you'll notice that every day at about 11 o'clock or 10:30, you're more than likely going to get a notification that says, hey, these are today's lunch specials that are being customized to your area. Click here to get a special discount. So they know exactly, obviously, when people are going to be ordering food, and they really capitalize on anticipating that reward and what that discount might be, or what the restaurants might be for the day. So it's a very classic example of anticipating a potentially variable reward. The third is that our brain loves new things, right? This is exactly the reason why I think Instagram became kind of infamous in terms of their creation of the newsfeed. So any app developer will tell you that to refresh your newsfeed, you really don't need to require a user to do any gesture. However, the reason, if you've ever looked at your Instagram newsfeed and you hold the screen down and release it, this pattern of giving people a prompt to trigger a reward and create and find new content that's customized to their newsfeed. This spinning wheel, I think they actually inherited from pokey swipe machines. They looked at the human behavior of people pressing a button, waiting for the circle to complete, and being rewarded with something new, whether it was new content or a new follower. So this is another way of thinking about how to excite people with new things. For those who use dating apps, they are probably the best example of this, right? Because you've always got somebody new to swipe, right? So they're very careful about how they create content and making sure that you never see the same thing twice. The fourth is really creating stickiness in your product. So, whilst Facebook has got a lot of bad press recently, it's not too surprising to see that their users have continued to grow. And the reason for that is because of that initial investment that a lot of people have made over time in terms of building their network, adding photos. And if anyone, like me, who has a lot of friends having babies right now, most of my newsfeed is just people posting new photos of their baby, inviting you to new baby showers, getting married. All of these life events, Facebook has done a really, really good job of profiling and highlighting, and even creating some of those customized memories, right? So adding that feature of, on this day 5 years ago, this is a reminder of where you were, right? So it's a reminder to all Facebook users of just how much they've invested in the platform and how sticky it's become over time. And the fifth one is really making sure that, what you present in an application is relevant to your users, right? So this actually requires some machine learning to really understand the preferences that are unique to your chosen user, right? Now, a lot of apps have also been taken this to the next level. In the case of Netflix, where you might be using the application but have multiple users or multiple viewers at home. So being able to create a single profile that gives you movies and TV shows that are specific to your watching habits is obviously going to be very different, to your sister or your parents, right? So Netflix has done an extremely good job of actually personalizing content in understanding that some of their apps might not have a single user. So I want to focus on a case study of what happens when you get this right or you get this wrong. And I thought, in the interest of adapting during the pandemic, one case study which I've always find extremely interesting is that of COVID tracing apps. And what I think is so interesting about this as an app developer is that here I think in a once in a lifetime situation where we have countries all over the world dealing with what is fundamentally the same problem, and their users as well have also the same objective. However, the execution of COVID tracing apps has been vastly different between different countries, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from that. And one thing that we've noticed, at least in our research, that a lot of governments who commission app developers to build these COVID tracing apps is that they focus far too much on what their objectives are in terms of containing the spread of the virus, tracking and tracing it, building public health information data sets, and keeping the public informed. These are all relevant, and they're all noble missions to focus on when building an application. But a lot of this doesn't register to the average user, right? And so what makes this different to a normal application is first a realization, and this is hard to hear, but nobody really wants a COVID app, a COVID tracing app, right? There is no one in the world that was asking for this before the pandemic. Everybody's downloading this app purely as a necessity to just get on with their lives. In many cases, people are often frustrated that they're forced to download an app in order to just enter a venue. And then on top of that, when the app doesn't work as it's intended to, this again creates a lot more frustration with end users, despite the best efforts of different governments to solve this. So this is just a quick snapshot of some examples globally we've seen, and there is dozens more, but I didn't have space to fit them all on one slide, which is just to show what happens when app developers don't think about their end users and really don't plan for the markets that they're launching their applications in. So the most recent example, and this was, I think, just last month in Scotland, and they basically had all of these people who had just downloaded the application, ready to upload their vaccine passports, and they were unable to board the plane simply because of the application crashing due to the huge volumes of users downloaded on day one, which meant that a lot of people missed their flights and a lot of bad press was received by this app, and that was only in the first 2 days. So it's very, very hard to win the trust of users back. Because as we know, people are extremely unforgiving. If they don't like your app from the first download, if it's difficult to register, if it doesn't identify your login details, most people won't give the app a second chance. They'll delete it and never look at it again. In Indonesia, some of you may have seen this press. This was actually related to the e-hack application. And, unfortunately, because of the amount of information that is required from users, actually creates a lot of concerns in terms of how do you manage that data securely, because you're handling everything from NIKs, passport IDs, medical history, tracking history. And so to manage all of this information is actually an extremely difficult thing for governments to handle if they don't have the right provisions in place to actually deal with such an amount of data. In Australia, my hometown, we made press, I think, for all the worst reasons. If you look at how much was spent on building an app that was only able to trace 17 people, despite the government spending more than $9 million on it. So investing in an app and spending money on it doesn't necessarily guarantee it's going to be a success if you haven't designed and architected the application correctly. And so to illustrate this, I'll use two examples. Again, really focusing on what it is that the users want, not what you as the app developer wants. Right. So this is just two examples. On the left is, again, both of these apps have the exact same objective. An instance of Care Protect, they actually launch, and in their defense, this is the second iteration of the eHack app. But unfortunately, some of the fundamental principles in terms of the architecture and the design of the app did not align, or does not align at all, to what it is that users really want. In the second example for the NHS, which is the National Health Service in the UK, what we can see is that they've actually taken a very different approach in terms of their data model. Now, the NHS, funny enough, last year actually built an app very similar to Care Protect. They used a centralized model. And for those who don't know the difference, it's really making sure how the data is collected and managed. So in a centralized approach, it requires identifiable data to be uploaded to a single server and database, which is then responsible for managing all of that information securely. Now that's a lot of trust to put into one institution or one database, and of course, when you carry so much sensitive data, the chances of it leaking, as we saw with the 1.3 million records, is a lot more of a burden on governments. So to avoid this as well, is the NHS looked at the responses of most people who don't want to share data, right? When you think of health information, in terms of sensitivity and people's attitudes towards this data, it ranks far higher than financial data, right? So people are more accustomed to actually sharing an update on paying a driver or paying a friend than they are on seeing their doctor for a private, health condition. This is not something that people often tweet about. And so understanding how you manage health data is something that took the NHS 2 tries to get right. And what they did differently the first time was they adopted a decentralized model, which focuses on using APIs of COVID tracing that were developed by Google and Apple, which was really cool to see. These 2 organizations, I think for the first time in human history, actually come together and work on a single objective, which was to provide a system that only required Bluetooth Low Energy. So this is a very low footprint type technology, which allowed people within a certain range of each other to actually exchange a different ticket. And on that ticket was regenerated every I think 30 minutes. So this unique ticket or key didn't have anything that was traceable back to that person, but at the end of the day, it did upload everybody's unique keys that they'd exchanged with everybody that they'd met that day. And then if anyone presented with a positive case, they could upload their result to the NHS app, and it would immediately notify everyone who exchanged keys with that positive person in the last week, and notify them that they may be at risk based on their location at this time at this place. But in that process, none of this information identifying who the person was that was positive or any of the people that were within the range was ever actually transmitted beyond the application itself, which again gives people a lot more security and a lot more assurance that their data is being protected because it's not handled by a single database. The other thing to consider was contact tracing. Now, contact tracing, originally when the Care Protect app launched, they used GPS. And for those who, have a phone like myself, which is a few years old, will know that GPS doesn't do wonders for your battery life. So a lot of people would often actually turn off the location sharing because of just how much it drained the battery on the device. And of course, that means the contact tracing is completely ineffective if you turn off that feature. When using BLE, because it works in the background, it's the same technology that we use to connect our headphones. If you've got wireless headphones, it can work requiring a very low amount of battery. So your device is not drained as a result of just trying to go about your business using a COVID app. The third, as I mentioned, in terms of the data collected. So if you look at, I think the Care Protect app, which was often surprised me, is just how much information they need on the application really to complete the simplest of tasks. And so the reason that the NHS has actually won a lot more users to the platform and gained a lot more ratings is because people don't feel like they're sacrificing a lot of their personal information just to do something that is seen really as a compliance thing that the government is forcing us to do. So if you are ever asking people for information, to say, if you want to turn tracking on, if you want to provide ID details, you have to give a really good reason as to why people would opt in to sharing their personal information. If you don't, people are only going to assume the worst, and chances are they're really not going to engage with your application. The fourth is third-party access. So as I said, Google and Apple created exposure notification APIs And if you haven't read about it, it's a really, really fascinating technology, which has been able to create an environment for tracing without exchanging any personal identifiers, which is quite amazing. Now, unfortunately, I think here in Indonesia, one of the responses that they took when pushing out the app, I think for the first release, the app was almost 150 megabytes. Now, for anyone who has seen, some of the Android devices in circulation, you will know that the device capacity is extremely limited. So in order to download 143 megabytes, again, that required people to look at these 35 apps that they have and consider what are they going to delete in order to make way for this new app that they were forced to use. So it was often the case, people just didn't download the app because they didn't have the space. And so I think recently they've been able to reduce it to 71 megabytes. But as you can see, the NHS has done it, for a lot less at 17. Now, to deal with the bulkiness of the application, instead of actually looking at resizing it and making it a lot more efficient in terms of its use of battery and capacity on phones, what they've done instead is actually made the application available to, I think, 11 of the largest tech companies in the country, which of course raises a lot of questions as to what they are going to do with that data. I think there was a pledge signed promising that they wouldn't. But again, the skeptic in all of us might think otherwise if we are actually allowing all of these platform players to access very personal, health-sensitive data. So again, two very different approaches and two very different outcomes, as you can see from the amount of ratings that both apps have received, and both are trying to achieve the exact same thing. So in summary today, because I've got 5 minutes left, I just want to leave you with 10 tips when considering developing an application. This one is often overlooked in terms of collaboration tools. So this is really, really a difference maker when you're working globally and remotely amongst different teams. We've had to really think differently about how we design. So we've actually adopted Figma, which is now really the gold standard for a lot of designers out there, and it allows for a different type of real-time collaboration when building mobile app mockups. Miro has had to replace all of our whiteboards when working virtually, so it's a really great tool for teams to actually collaborate and whiteboard new ideas in real time. Jira, very much the gold standard for most product companies. If you're not familiar with it, and you are looking to join any of the tech companies you see today, I would highly recommend taking some crash courses in Jira, because it's one platform that we all share when managing projects. Google Docs, pretty straightforward. It's like Microsoft Office, but only in the cloud. And then finally, Maze. So Maze is a user testing tool that really allows companies, because we've had such restrictions in the pandemic, if you were previously testing an application, the old model would require maybe creating surveys, sending them out, waiting for feedback, or if you did want to do, say, quantitative data analysis on user testing, in some cases, people would create focus groups and get everybody using the application and observe what they're doing in a room. Now, this is not practical these days during a pandemic, and it's definitely not scalable. So what Maze now allows us to do is actually build a prototype that clicks and behaves like a real application without writing a single line of code. So we can actually see and illustrate different types of missions that we want our users to complete. And we actually then publish that app to a select group of users anywhere in the world. And we get real-time feedback on everything from missed clicks, time to complete a mission, even heat maps of where people click the most on each screen. So it's a really good way to actually revise and refine your design before you push it to the developers. Jobs to be done is a very simple framework that is used by a lot of product managers. And it really gets us out of this idea of thinking that everything needs an application, right? It really focuses on the user and trying to understand in very simple terms, what is the job that needs to be done, which is really the trigger of why somebody's downloading your application in the first place, right? So if you're very clear on what it is that that user is trying to achieve, by downloading your app, you can then focus and prioritize all your efforts in making that journey as simple and frictionless as possible. But as I said before, you are competing with a number of other incumbent apps. So really consider, if you are creating a solution for a job to be done, is that job to be done being solved by another app, and what can you learn from that? Now, if there's not an online competitor app for your idea, consider what are the offline ways that people actually would undertake in order to complete that job. Because in a lot of cases, people are always trying to digitize something that is maybe done offline and something that is extremely inefficient and manual. Number 3, when localizing your design for your user base, again, this is particularly important for Indonesia. We've seen a lot of applications don't actually recognize that if you are releasing an app in Indonesia, chances are you need to give the option for both Bahasa and English. And if you think that you can get away with just offering credit card payments, you can just ask Expedia or Uber. They didn't last very long in the markets. Both applications, whilst they were very successful outside of Indonesia, when they arrived here, Expedia and Uber only offered credit card payments. Now, if you look at the penetration of credit card payments is extremely low. I think it's less than 15% across the country. So all the inventions of new digital wallets are slowly moving into the space, gives people a lot more options to pay electronically. So really considering how you're optimizing for those local digital wallet providers is extremely important, as we found in the case with Bluebird. Using less data. Now, this is something that is not to be underestimated. Again, thinking about the market that you're building within. If you are targeting the majority of users, especially here in Indonesia, one of the considerations that a lot of them have is top up and topping up their data. Now, for many of us who might earn a decent wage, we never have to face a challenge of deciding between data and, say, a food that we want to eat that day. When I spoke to the CEO of Coca-Cola a number of years ago, she actually told me that Coca-Cola's biggest competitor was actually Telkomsel, right? Because of the nature of discretionary spend, how limited it is in Indonesia, that often many people would have to choose between topping up their mobile or buying a bottle of Coke, right? So if you understand just how scarce data is for the majority of mobile users in Indonesia, it really forces you to think differently about how you provide a very engaging user experience, even if you are offline. How do you pre-cache content, and also how do you separate the UI from different network activities? Number 5, in terms of considering native over hybrid. So again, as we saw in the example with Baduli, is that if you are doing intensive features like GPS, is going to have a huge drain, particularly on low-end devices. So making sure that you always solve for the lowest common denominator, right? So trying to see how you optimize both the battery, storage, and CPU to your application using a native language like Kotlin or like Swift really helps you optimize at the device level, especially with the number of devices in circulation today. Number 6, request only the data you need. So I made a point about this earlier. If you are expecting to use people's data or monetize it or sell it to advertisers, you have to think really hard about what is the value that the user gets from giving you access to their information. Making that clear before you actually ask for it. And I'm still amazed at how many apps just ignore that, and they just say, give us access to notifications, give us access to your tracking device data. If you're not going to offer a benefit, people aren't going to give you that access. Properly planning app promotion. So a lot of effort is put into building a great app, and it's a good endeavor, but it's slightly foolish to think, build it and they will come. So really having a go-to-market approach that focuses more on pull versus push is extremely important. And what I mean by pull versus push, as a marketing term, you're trying to understand basic advertising for an application requires TV commercials, billboards, massive advertisement. These are all push strategies, right? If you understand a user's existing offline journey, and you can find a way to actually put your app as part of that offline journey and trigger them to download the app, it becomes a far more effective way to pull them into the application. One example is with Prodia. So they're one of our customers, which is the largest laboratory clinic in the country. If you've ever had a COVID test, chances are it was done by them. Now, if you enter a Prodia clinic and you want to receive your results after getting, say, a COVID test, you will be prompted to actually download the app in order to receive your results electronically, right? So that's an example of a pull strategy. Don't make bad reviews worse by ignoring feedback. We absolutely, hold our users' feedback as kind of, liquid gold, right? So whenever somebody is dissatisfied with an app, they're far more likely to complain than somebody who is a promoter. So really trying to review those comments, respond to them, and use them to actually revise your product strategy and your roadmap. Finally, consider the aspects of a user's behavior and which ones you want to focus on to help them get engaged. So remember those top 5 points I made earlier. Which one of those are you really going to focus on in terms of improving engagement? And the last but not least, again, is really, as you saw in the example, between governments building COVID apps and really what it is that users want. Make sure that you understand the intersection between both the goals of your business or your app developers and the goals of your end users. So that's all I had time to present today. And I, of course, welcome any questions you have, and feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or email. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Nathan, for your very, very fruitful talk. It was very interesting. I learned so much things personally. And I especially liked how you mentioned that your company helped a lot of other company grew, especially during this hard times with the pandemic, and what your company did with Bluebird. And we do have some questions here in the comments, so we can start with that. We have 10 minutes, so I'll quickly brush through that as well. So the first question is by Angelique, and her question is, who are your biggest clients so far?
Our biggest clients so far at the moment, currently our biggest client. Yeah, so I think recently our biggest client at the moment is Mandiri Securitas. So we're working on a complete revamp of their mobile and desktop trading application. As you would have seen from, I think Ajaib is one of the other sponsors here. So they are making some great moves and traction in terms of investment products. And so, some of the traditional banks are also seeing how they can, really optimize their services for mobile. So we're helping Mandiri Securitas on that journey. As I mentioned, we also worked with Prodia over the last year to revamp their mobile application so people could actually book their tests, speak to a doctor, receive their referral, and pay for a test all within the one application. And of course, we worked with Bluebird last year to revamp their mobile product, as well as Line Parcel. So their challenge was e-commerce was going through the roof. And so they had to find a very simple way to actually directly integrate with Bukalapak and Tokopedia so they could accept orders and dispatch drivers to send those orders as well. So there's some of the customers we've worked with.
Yeah. Very interesting. Speaking of projects, there was also another question right there that is wondering which projects is most exciting for you, or which projects or client is your favorite so far?
Oh, I can't pick a favorite client. That's going to get me into trouble. I personally have, I have a soft spot for digital health. My background, as you saw in Telstra in Australia, was we spent 4 years building what's now the largest digital health company in Australia, Telstra Health. So I've always had a bit of a soft spot for healthcare. And I think in a pandemic, that's become even more important. So working on the Prodia app was definitely something that I really, really enjoyed, because it really feels like, you're making a difference in terms of, giving people the tools to access really critical healthcare services, speak to doctors in real time when they can't get out of bed, or they don't want to get into a car or go to a hospital. And also making sure that they don't have to go to the clinic again just to get their results, right? So it's something that I think a lot of us take for granted, but I think, healthcare for me was was pretty special, and having the chance to be involved with that was really enjoyable. But I love the challenge of a more complex app like Mandiri Securitas. If you look at the complexity of professional traders versus casual traders, there's a lot of screens and graphs that we have to work with to build into one very simple platform. So that's definitely, I think, one of the most complex projects we've worked on.
Okay. So Kevin Wijaya also asked, so there's a slight plug in there. So I have been making my own app the past few months as a personal project. He was wondering how can he get actual real life people to use his product? Any tips and tricks that you can offer to a soon to be creator of an app?
Yeah, sure. So one tool, like I said, which is really easy to basically publish, and it won't be your full-fledged app with working code, but it might just be the user experience in terms of the look and feel of a clickable prototype. So we've had a lot of success using Maze. You can literally send it to anyone, and they just have to click a link. There's no app they have to download. They can run the app through a browser, and it's a very easy and simple way to get your app out to a lot of friends and family. And all of the diagnostics and all of the analytics of where they click on the screen, how long they spend, that's automatically recorded for you. So you just get it as one simple report. So that's one way to do it without using any code. But if you have an existing app, great. I think, maybe word of mouth is the easiest way, because, on the App Store, I think there's a lot of applications to choose from. So thinking, how do you put your app as top of mind for your friends and family? It's going to require, a lot of hustling and word of mouth if you can't afford the big billboards like the rest of the big tech companies. Yeah.
Okay, so we have 6 minutes left, and I have one last question for you before you can leave any closing remarks. It is by Bernardo Carlo. He is asking, what do you think will be the biggest trend in the future of web development?
Of web development?
Yeah.
Interesting. Because I spent all this time talking about mobile development.
Yeah, it's like a complete switch of lanes.
No, it's fine. I think, the challenge that I think we're seeing for traditional web developers is really differentiating themselves from, I think, out-of-the-box platforms. So where, we personally don't do much web development because what we find is there's an extremely competitive space. And some of the tools, like if you look at, Wix.com, it's giving a lot of, entrepreneurs out-of-the-box solutions to build a website, have an online presence without hiring any engineers. So if you are a web developer, I think it's really important to look at, what's happening in web development, and that there are solutions which are somewhat disrupting how much we relied on web developers in the past. So I think if you can find a way to also learn new and emerging technologies, for example, I think Flutter is, one technology that we've been really interested in. So you can use that for web development, and you can also use that for mobile development. So it's becoming a really viable hybrid language that is allowing people to build apps a lot quicker and means you don't have to have two separate development teams as well. So that's one consideration for web.
Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. Do you have any last words for our participants? Any last tips and tricks for them to go through this hackathon?
For the hackathon, good luck. So the funny thing is, we actually just finished a hackathon in Ice House on the weekend. So we had our first hackathon. Yeah, we had our first hackathon in like 2 years, because we're finally allowed to get people back to the office, which is really exciting. My tips, because we just finished the judging tonight, we're going to actually announce the winners tomorrow at lunchtime internally. Some tips, I think, one tip is we actually stocked our office with a giant fridge of Red Bull, which I think helped through the 24 hours just to keep the energy levels up. But I think definitely is really understand the strengths of each individual team member in your team for the hackathon, right? So not all of us are developers, not all of us are designers, not all of us are business analysts, right? Really trying to acknowledge that everybody in the team can bring something different, and doing as much as possible to include them in the process, so you actually get a far better outcome than you ever could achieve with just one or two people. That would be my advice for the hackathon. But yeah, and have fun. I think that's the most important thing, right? Because the sky's the limit with a hackathon. I love the fact that there's really no boundaries. You can get as creative and as crazy as you want. But do just think of what is the judging criteria. So if you're not sure, remember the judges are your users effectively, right? So understand what it is they're looking for and build towards that. Otherwise, you get too focused on building something shiny that actually none of the judges are interested in. So don't forget your end users.
Okay, thank you very much. Your talk was super fruitful. I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching took screenshots. Even I took notes on my iPad. Like, oh, these are so interesting. Like, I wrote everything down. Yeah, so thank you very
Sure.
much. We will definitely put up his contacts in our Instagram account. So if you wanted to reach out, you can head over there. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you
nice
so
night.
much. Terima
Thank
kasih.
you.
Dadah.
Okay, so up next we have another speaker by the name of Aisha, and she is a consultant and head of the social impact team at Boston Consulting Group (BCG) in the Jakarta office. With many years of experience in advising various companies and governments in Southeast Asia, Aisha also recently co-founded Zakat Loop, an organization that collects and distributes scholarship funds for recent graduates, students entering the workforce. And once again, as a reminder, please put all of the questions down in the comments and we will get through that soon. So I would like to invite Asha to the floor whenever she's ready. Hi.
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me? Okay, can you actually give me 1 minute? My computer is just frozen at the moment.
Of course, no problem. Take your time. Uh, is it possible for you to turn on your camera?
Can you
Hi.
hear? Hello.
Wait, okay,
Okay.
so we can definitely see you clearly.
Okay.
So
Sorry
everyone,
for
this is
this
Aisha.
issue. Okay. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me here.
Thank you for being.
I think the purpose of our discussion today will be to kind of understand the outlook or the overview of like what the Indonesian market is about, especially if you kind of want to get into like the social impact sectors. So yeah, I would go into several examples later on, and I really would like to keep this conversation open. So, I'll spare more time for question and answers. But first of all, I would like to open with a video. I hope everyone can see this clearly.
Okay.
I'll share screen. So yeah, can everyone see the screen? Can you see the screen? Okay. And I don't know if you can actually hear the sound, but I think there is a translation. There's a subtitle, so hopefully people can still see, can still get the
Meet
message.
Dewi and Putri, two girls from Indonesia. Dewi's family is rich and belongs to the top 10% of households in terms of income. Putri's family is not as fortunate. They are in the bottom 10% of households, part of the 28 million people who live below the poverty line. Inequality divided these girls even before they were born. Putri's mother did not visit a formal health facility while she was pregnant and did not get the right nutrition. Because of this, Putri was born underweight. Dewi's mother, on the other hand, was able to visit her doctor regularly and get the right nutrition so that Dewi was born with a healthy weight. During her first 2 years, Putri did not receive her full vaccinations and didn't get the right nutrition either. So, rather than catching up to Dewi, who continued to grow tall and healthy, Putri fell even further behind. Dewi grew up in a house with clean running water and a toilet. Putri's family couldn't afford a toilet. Because she had to defecate in the open, she got diarrhea frequently. This made her growth even more stunted, while Dewi, who almost never had diarrhea, grew tall. Inequality deepened when the girls were old enough to start school. Dewi got a head start by attending early childhood education classes, which taught her how to learn. Putri, meanwhile, stayed at home. Dewi made it all the way to her high school graduation, and then continued on to university. Putri started school too, and finished grade 6. But because the extra cost for books, uniforms, and travel were too high, her family could not afford to keep her in school. Instead, they needed her to earn extra income for the household. With her education, Dewi found a job with good pay and benefits. Putri wasn't as fortunate. She had to settle for a job in the informal sector with less pay.
Maybe I should check whether. Okay, sound is good. Okay, just want to check.
Less security, and fewer benefits. Without a good job, Putri won't be able to afford healthcare or make sure that her children stay in school. And so, poverty and inequality get passed on from generation to generation. Now, what if we told you that Putri's story doesn't only apply to the bottom 10%? Another 68 million Indonesians in the bottom 40% of households are not much better off. It doesn't take much for them to slip into poverty. A bad harvest, a lost job, an unexpected illness. But it doesn't have to be this way. Let's step back for a minute. What if Putri's mother got the prenatal care and nutrition that she needed? What if Putri had received all her vaccinations? What if her home had clean water and a toilet? What if Putri started school in kindergarten and could stay in school until she graduated from high school? What if she had the chance to build her skills and find a job with a decent wage? This would help not only Putri, but also her family and the generations that come after her. And if other girls like Putri did the same, this could change their communities. And, add it all together, this could change Indonesia. But it all starts with giving Putri and Dewi and other kids like them an equal chance.
Okay. Stop sharing. Okay. So yeah, that was a brief. Okay. Wait. Okay. So yeah, that was just a brief video about I guess the overall issue of income equality in Indonesia. It's like the word income equality itself is just a word on its own, but actually there are so many sub issues, sub problems under it. I think you've seen in the video, it actually also talks about the issue in education, the issue in health, the issue in sanitation. So there are so many aspects behind income equality problem in Indonesia. So why is it actually relevant, and why do we even talk about it? First, as you can see right now, some of the biggest companies, what are they trying to solve? And how is their achievement in comparison to the achievement in the social sectors? Take example like Facebook. Their mission is to connect people, and their solutions is to have social media to connect with each others. While at the same time, and they receive a lot of funding, they receive a lot of success. In contrast, things like, poverty, income equality, lack of access to sanitations, they never really get these kind of attentions, and then they never really get these kind of fundings, and they never really get, some sort of solutions that attracts, worldwide talents, or, the top people who wants to kind of solve the problem. So it is disheartening, but that's the reality. The reason why, social issues or our income equality problems is not really going anywhere for, the past, I don't know, 50, 100, maybe even more years, is, the lack of talent, the lack of funding towards that sector. So hopefully, through this talk, I could provide some perspective into, what are the issues on the ground, and actually what are the opportunities for you as, the next generation, I guess. I hope I'm also the next generation, to kind of be involved in making a solutions specifically through technology. So let me also share again my screen. One second. Doesn't seem to share the screen, so let me check again. Okay, I think now it's showing the screen. So yeah, I guess throughout our conversation today, I would like to sort of highlight my experience and also what I gather around two key issues in Indonesia. The first one is inequality, and the second one is climate change. We've talked a little bit about the inequality, and I would like to just give you an example of my experience in the health sectors, actually. So tuberculosis care in Indonesia. Not sure if a lot of you knows what tuberculosis is, but tuberculosis is basically a disease that is caused by a bacteria, and it causes harms in your lungs. It makes you cough, and ultimately it can actually leads to death. So the issue around tuberculosis in patients is they require the patients to undergo treatments for 6 months with daily medicine. So they need to take, I think, 3 medicines a day in an exact time. So, every morning at 9 a.m., like every after lunch at 1 p.m., and at night at 7 p.m. So, it requires a constant monitoring. And what happens is it provides a significant burden to the healthcare facilities who needs to, monitor these patients, because unless they are disciplined with the medication regimen, the total care and treatment will fail. For example, you've gone 3 months of treatments, and then in the middle you just forget your medicine and not take it again, even though you feel better already. The whole treatment will fail. So the constant monitoring is required for these kind of patients. So for the health facility itself, they need you to they need right now, because there's no strong systems that helps you to communicate with your patients. helps you to communicate with government in terms of monitoring. What they do is they need to do manual documentations. So they need to count manually how many patients are visiting the clinics that day, how many of them are diagnosed with tuberculosis, how many of them are starting the treatment, and for these patients, in which months or in which medications are they in. Everything is mostly in manual documentations. The second pain points is they also need to manually monitor the patient. So they have a responsibility to tell the patients, don't forget to take your medicine at 9 a.m., at 12 a.m. So they need to constantly, call or WhatsApp these patients. So, well, as you can imagine, what's going to happen? Well, actually, no one really do it. So, what happens in Indonesia is we never really know the actual TB cases because we lost so many people in documentation. Um, and then, as an implication, if you don't know how many people are actually sick, first, you cannot trace them. So, similar like COVID, tuberculosis is also a transmitted disease. So, you can transmit it. So, especially if you're living in the same house with bad ventilations, high chance or you will get like the disease if someone in your house is sick. So yeah, if you don't have a proper monitoring, you can actually trace like who are sick and are they already recovered or not. Another problem is you also cannot estimate the right amount of funding, the right amount of medication, the right amount of cares and healthcare facilities or lab testing that is required to solve the problems. So that's why the issue around manual documentations is really important. The second issue is around patients monitoring is really about, caring for your patients. And as you can imagine, like with, these administrative burden to the healthcare facilities, no one is also actually doing it. So, a lot of patients in Indonesia is actually, they just, get a treatment for 1 week or 1 month. They feel that they are feeling better, not sick anymore. No one's monitoring them, so they are not continuing the treatment. What happens is, they might actually feel better and they might actually feel healthy, but the bacteria is still within their body and they can actually spread the disease, unconsciously. So, like these issues shows us that manual work is a source of pain points, is a source of issues, and by solving that manual works, you can actually scale the solutions. You can actually make the solutions more effective. So a couple of solutions that's been implemented in other countries and right now being tried out in Indonesia is first to utilize mobile application actually. So I think the previous speakers talks about how I guess right now in Indonesia penetration of mobile phone is increasing. Some of them are not like the full smartphone but feature phone. So how can you also, like as a developer or as I guess, a part of the solutions, also think about like this part of the society that also needs a similar, that also has similar issues like us. We want to, for example, for us, maybe we want to get reminded on where do we need to pay our bill. For them, it's as simple as when do I need to take my medications? When do I need to go back to the doctor for my next checkup? So these type of solutions, when they are made through a technology, actually, like in one of the research, increase patients' participation, like their voluntary participation. So you don't actually need, the doctor or the nurse to, call you or drag you to the hospital or making sure you are taking our medication. So they're actually doing it voluntary, by 2 to 3 times higher versus if there's no such technology solutions. So this is just one example of how technology is actually really needed to solve social issues in Indonesia. That's the first one. The second one, I would also talk about climate change. So in terms of right now, I'm not sure like how aware are you in terms of like the issues around climate change. So I will just give you a brief, I guess, overview of what happens right now. So I'm sure all of you kind of knows what climate change is, but I guess the commitment right now in the world is we're trying to limit our global warming by 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. And if we're not trying to solve that issue, we could be in a big disaster, not only in 2050, but also in the previous years. As of now, actually, we're not meeting the target. So, the world is targeting around 1.5 degrees Celsius. Currently, actually, we're like with the current action and commitment, we're headed towards like 2.4, 2.5 degrees in 2050. So then, there because of this, tremendous issue, then more and more people, more and more, I guess, stakeholders, more and more public participation is happening actually around this point of time, and so there are a lot more push towards solutions in climate change, and actually one of the big part that people are not or not none of people are getting into the space is the innovation part and the technology part in climate change. So I think I have okay, I don't think I put it in here, but I think I would like to just raise awareness around like two technology that I think will sort of be very useful in the future. The first one is technology around measuring and also understanding your emission footprint. So emission footprint means, in your daily life, you're eating something, you're going to school, or you're going to the office, you're going to emit some sort of emissions, carbon dioxides, or other types of emissions. So more and more, I think we're really trying to limit our like with technology, you can actually reduce your carbon footprint or your emission footprint. For example, initially you are using, like a standard or like a usual clothing, but later on you can use a recyclable clothing, which has a less carbon footprint. However, you cannot really go into like zero, right? You still want to you will still emit some sort of emission, and you want that emission to go in order to reach the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. So what happens is you actually need to offset what you are still emitting. So for example, I'm emitting 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide per day. So how do we make sure my emission is actually zero? Is you can actually purchase what you call as carbon credits. So, for example, you're paying or you're investing in forest projects where the forest that is planted, the trees that are planted, is going to absorb your carbon dioxide. So, assuming you plant 100 trees, they can actually absorb your 20 kilograms emission per day. So that's sort of what happened in the world. So right now there is a really nascent technology around, how do I actually calculate accurately my emissions with my daily activities? And then second, how do I also embed um, or offset my carbon footprint in my daily activities? So, for example, one good example is actually in Gojek right now. So, I'm not sure if you've seen this feature, but right now in Gojek, there is a feature called, I think, carbon offsetting your emission, and they partner with a startup called Jejakin. So what Jakin do is they calculate your emission, and then they actually charge you from your GoPay to a certain amount based on your willingness. Like for example, I want to offset 20 kilograms of my carbon, and that means I need to pay 100,000 rupiah to build forest somewhere. So these carbon offset technology is embedded into your sort of daily transactions. Another example is one of the e-commerce. Right now, I think it's only in Germany. So what happens is in e-commerce, one of the biggest carbon footprint you will leave is actually your transportation costs. In order for you to sort of offset the transportation costs, there is actually an option in that e-commerce for you to pay more so that you can actually is actually causing zero emissions. So there are all these different solutions that's trying to target the consumers, so that consumers can more actively participate in even reducing their emissions. So that's the first area. The second area is around so in related to actually the first opportunities is right now, because of the push towards climate positive actions, there are more awareness around reforestations and renewable energies. So the one issues with reforestation is forest is typically very huge, the land that is covered is very big. So it's very hard for people to actually monitor whether the trees are actually being built, whether by year 3 or year 5 that tree is being burnt again or not. And so what happens right now is there's only a manual solution. So you will send a surveyor to the forest and to actually see the forest, whether, they're still in good conditions. Are there any criminal activities in the forest? Or you will, trace the woods and, see if any of the trees is falling down or things like that. So that it's done very manually. And as you can imagine, you will require a lot of people to, go into the forest, will require a lot of time. So that solution is not scalable. While at the same time, more reforestation efforts and forest monitoring efforts are being done. So it's definitely not scalable. So again, the role of technology is to make sure these sort of solutions can scale and benefit more people. So several different technology opportunity here is one is like a geospatial monitoring. So what that means is you actually have a sensor that is located in the sky to actually sensor the forest and to see whether I'm not sure if it's a heat sensor or whatever sensor, but they can actually sense whether the trees is decreasing or increasing, whether the trees are getting sick or they're in healthy conditions. So things like that will actually reduce the amount of people you need to go to the forest, reduce the amount of time that you need to actually verify the forest is in good conditions. So those are sort of like two examples among humongous opportunities in the climate change sector or yeah, climate action sectors. And like I think if you are looking into the next big thing, actually a quote from the CEO of BlackRock, one of the biggest investment fund in the world, is looking ahead like 5-10 years from now, the startups or the new business that BlackRock is trying wants to actually fund is not again in the realm of e-commerce or food delivery or things like that, but actually in the realm of sustainability. So actually there are so many opportunities within the space. If you're looking to build some products that is meaningful for you and also for the community, this will definitely be the next space and a very big space in coming years. So those are, I guess, the two brief introductions into the two social issues that really requires technology and a capability of developers like you to solve and to be able to scale the solutions and be able to solve the issue in a larger scale. So I think one thing that I really want to point out is a lot of people, when they're asking me about, I have a social enterprise. What do I need to do? Do I need to prioritize making profit or making an impact first? So I guess the perspective I could give is actually to maximize social impact, you need to generate revenue. So if you're building a product, you're looking into, finding an investor, finding a fund, the first thing that they will ask is, what is your business models? So otherwise, unless you're a nonprofit organization, you really need to have a clear and a strong revenue model. So it doesn't really answer to, impact first or profit first, but definitely you need to have profit in order to scale your impact. And also, like what typically investor would ask is, how will you scale this business? And so, typically if you want to get, big investments, they will also want to see, the solutions being scaled up really fast. So that's why the revenue model part is always very essential in whatever product you're building, especially if you are a business. It's a different story if if you're deciding to be, a nonprofit. So this is an example of one of the Twilio is a cloud services. I think they're based in the UK. And so they have a nonprofit arms called Twilio.org. So Twilio, they purposefully not providing their services for free in the nonprofit arm. So what they do is they sell their cloud service at a reduced rate. That is, affordable, mostly for the nonprofits, or also for like a Kickstarter business. So what happens is actually they are able to generate revenue, and they also can grow 150% year on year. And as an implication, they actually can create far greater impact, because they are able to generate revenue. They can actually put it back into the products building, make the products, better, do improvement, and generate actually more tractions because of this revenue loop that is coming back into their products. So in the end, they actually create far greater impact. They're starting out with like around hundreds of customers. Now they're in I think 1,000 or even a couple of thousands consumers. And actually these consumers are nonprofit. So by supporting these nonprofits, they're actually supporting a bigger community of the beneficiary of the nonprofits. So that is sort of how, I guess, from a business perspective, you should always kind of have in mind when building the products, is to make a clear revenue model. So yeah, I think for the rest of the time, I would actually want to interact with every one of you. I know that you're probably coming from a different background. You're probably having a different issues you want to solve. So actually, I think would be great to sort of interact and understand what you guys are facing and how I could probably help. Solve the issues. Okay, just want to check if there is any question. Oh, okay. So there's a private chat, and then there's a comment. Let me check. Okay. There's a question around. I'm passionate about women's empowerment and finding climate change issues that don't have good policies in my village. How to discuss the concept we want to people who can program language. Okay, let me think about. I don't actually really get the question, so let me read again.
I think I guess I'll just am I hearable? Okay. I guess I'll just help. I guess like my understanding of that question personally is that perhaps her village is not too like their women in her village is not that empowered, and she was trying to figure out a way on increasing that empowerment within the villagers there. And how can she be able to integrate this idea of feminism and empowerment of women into tech?
Okay. Okay. I think that part I can answer. I'm just not sure about this one. How to discuss the concept you want to people who can program languages.
I guess the program languages part is more on like coding.
So yeah, I guess that's a two different questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
How does
I'll
Yeah, so I'll just rephrase the question real quick so for everyone to understand. So the first part is more on how can she integrate it to tech and how to help people in her villages, what kind of policies, and how can she like inherently like discuss such ideas and make it into real life into a software or an application if there is any examples of such. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, sure. I think the first part of the question is around, how do you communicate, issues and raise awareness in the communities? So there is sort of a popular theory in the social impact realm called theory of change. So you can later Google it. But I think basically one of the aspects of that theory of change is change will be scalable once you actually have a vehicle of word of mouth and also local champion. So typically, the differences between projects that especially like social projects that are successful versus those that are not successful and not sustainable is buy-in from local people and having a local champion to actually sort of influence the other local communities. So it is typically very difficult for an outsiders to teach and communicate or act as a teacher sort of, right? And educate people and and tell them this is feminism or this is climate change and you need to do this. So typically a more effective approach is actually to have a local community champion. It is hard to get. I mean, it's also difficult to to find people in the community who sort of are is more educated and also have a similar willingness, but typically that's how you get things moving in the community. And the other aspect aside from having this local champion is embedding the message in their actually like daily community life. So things like if they have I don't know, a posyandu or a puskesmas in their community, or if they have a local arisan, or I guess like a petani community. So typically, we need to use those platforms and those communities as a way to transmit your message. And it's, in a lot of ways, sometimes we have to do it in non-traditional ways. So, like, for examples, if you go into like a local health facility, you don't actually talk about, this is feminism and this is how you get to be a feminist and, fight for your rights. But it's sort of, you can actually angle it from the point of, like their needs. I think the previous speakers also talks about, how understanding your end customers, and this is also applicable in every context, I guess. So, the needs of like these mothers in the local village, for example, is to make sure that their children are healthy. And so how do you get to ensure like your children are healthy is, by educating yourself around nutrition and stuff, and, as a also educating yourself on, child development, etc. So, I mean, that way, you don't actually teach them about feminism, but actually embedding like what you actually want to get out of feminism from like these people to act on, if that makes sense. I think on the second point around, how to communicate it into like a people who can program language, I don't have a specific answer, but I think typically what happens in companies is you have a document, I guess, sort of that is called like a business requirement document. So it acts as a bridge between, a business decisions or business needs and more of a technical requirements. And so typically there will be like the person in the middle who sort of, translate between the two. And, in a lot of companies, sometimes these translations, like some things gets lost in translation, and business doesn't always understand what or the IT guy doesn't always understand what business wants, and business also thinks that that's not what I want. So it happens in the fronts, but I guess the best way for you to do it is to start with the objectives that you're trying to achieve, and then have a discussion around, technically, how can we achieve that with technology, with, sort of the people who knows more about the technicalities. So yeah, I think we've discussed in length about that. Okay, I'll answer this one. What's your advice for Indonesian people to decrease their carbon footprint? The slightest things that I can do that might go a long way. Okay, this is interesting. So, you can actually look up in a lot of sources online. There is already a categorizations of, our daily life activities that has high impact, low impact, and sort of medium impact. So, I mean, if you want to go into like a full detail of, like sort of the ranking, I think it's available. But surprisingly, one of the big things that you can do is to be vegetarian. So like, a carbon that is released to produce like a like a plant protein versus like meat is around like 1/50th. So like meat or beef is actually around like 50 times higher in terms of carbon released, and chicken is around, I guess, 10 times higher versus a plant protein. So actually, like whenever you can, actually that's one of the slightest things, I guess, if you put it that way, that actually make a big change in terms of then the carbon produced. The other thing is actually globally and also in Indonesia, the biggest source of emission is energy. So your electricity usage. I think it's slightly harder to do, but actually goes a long way. I think the issue in Indonesia is, you cannot really choose where your electricity is coming from. So what happens is PLN, as sort of the aggregator, they will give you electricity, right? Your electricity comes from PLN. So behind PLN, there are different types of power generators. So generator powered from coal, which is like the dirtiest, from oil and gas, from geothermal, etc. So you cannot really choose actually where the sources are coming from. It just gets to you. So actually, one of the choice that you can make is to turn into, or actually, at least not turn, but add solar panel in your house, which is actually quite costly, but that goes a long way actually. But probably not the easiest thing, but that makes a big difference. So there are multiple other ways for us to from like the moment we wake up until the moment we sleep. There are so many choices that we can make. So the food we eat, the type of transportation we take, the type of clothing we buy, they actually all make a difference. So I think a lot of them actually, I mean, right now the options are there, clothing that are from a recycled cotton, for example, taking public transportation versus your own transportation. Not all of them are, in a way practical, especially like in Jakarta or Indonesia in general, but every choices actually matter.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually. But you mentioned transportation, and we all know how trafficy Jakarta is, right? So what are your thoughts on like the carbon footprint emitted through transportation, and if there's any possible ways that through tech that we can combat such issues like personal transportation?
Yeah. So I think transportation contributes around, I guess, 20 to 30% of the total emission. So it's also one of the big emission sources. There are several ways. There are, at least right now, there are emerging ways for to limit or to reduce emission from transportation. I think one of the obvious choices is go into public transport. Second, in terms, so the one of the biggest pollution maker in the world is actually aviation, so fuel aviation. So when you fly, it actually is a big responsibility in terms of carbon emissions. So there are some airlines that actually start, I think Qatar actually started like a net zero flight or something like that. So maybe later you can look it up. I forget like the actual name. So that's the first options. Second is there are also more airlines that are signing up to like an initiative called Sustainable Aviation Fuel. So they sort of engineer the fuel so that it's more sustainable. So I mean, you can continuously look for that kind of options when you fly. In terms of daily transportation, electric vehicles is one of the options to go forward. I mean, right now in Indonesia, we have limited choices. Probably the choices that we have in terms of price are within or out of our range. But I think going forward, more and more EV is coming out. Actually, in Indonesia, one big initiative by the government is they actually just established a battery company. So the battery is used for the electric vehicle. So they actually established a battery company. I think both for like a national usage, but also to be used in like exported vehicles. So I think going forwards, there should be more options in terms of choosing a lesser emission transportation.
Okay, thank you very much. We also have a response by Riza, which also made me thought of another follow-up question. It's about inequality, which you also mentioned before in the beginning of your presentation. So she was saying, "Thank you, Aisha. I feel social enterprise and technology like having a high gap, and we have to think globally, but sometimes it has to act locally. And for Indonesia specifically, we can obviously tell there's this huge gap of inequality for those who are in urban cities and those in rural cities. Like currently, is that inequality gap increasing or decreasing? And if so, is there any current like technologies or like apps that are currently helping with this inequality gap between such areas in Indonesia?
Okay, that's a difficult questions.
I'm so
My
sorry.
my honest answer is no. But I guess more and more business are trying to think about it that way. So first, in terms of inequality, actually during COVID, the divide is widening in a staggering rate. I think it is because smaller business are typically a lot more prone to disruptions like COVID. So COVID hits and their whole business just stops. So that sort of contributes to the widening gap. So that is sort of the situation right now. In terms of like apps or business that is trying to solve the problems, I mean, I think there are multiple ways that I think current social enterprise are trying to think about it or trying to solve the issues. I would probably divide it into directly and indirectly. So I guess directly is where their whole business models revolves around solving that issue. So, for example, things like empowering local merchant or a traditional merchants. So, like app like Ula, and then not sure what others, but that sort of app. So typically, what happens or the difficulty from this traditional merchant is first they need to sort of put more resources into administrative activities. So they need to order. They probably need to go contact the distributors and stuff. So with technology, they can actually do it with their phone and reduce a lot of those administrative activities, and try to focus their activities on more of a like a business development and more strategic issues within their traditional business. So I guess that's one of the way, and I think another way is these platforms are also trying to pull demand. So in a way, these small merchants, they get better prices versus their traditional distributors. So cheaper prices meanings more profit for them, basically. So that's one of the example of trying to, I guess, reduce income inequalities. I think the other indirect ways is when you sort of involve the people, like these disadvantaged people, as part of your business process. So, for example, businesses that employs women, or businesses that involves disabled people. So business like that. I mean, there are a lot of business like this. I think the issue or the difficulty they're facing is typically in terms of scalability, because if you want to sort of stay true to your mission, you need to source a specific profile of employees. So sometimes it gets in the way of scaling. But there's no, I mean, there's also like scaling doesn't always have to be the answer to your business. It's not wrong, to stay where you are, to stay at your scale, while staying true to your mission. So that's fine too. I think it's just the difficult. Just wants to point out what typical difficulties when that people typically face when trying to scale this kind of business. So yeah.
Okay, I guess we're up for our final question, which is actually not too related with sustainability. It is by Angelique as well. She is wondering, because based on your background, I believe, what do you think is the biggest challenge Indonesia has in terms of economic growth?
Okay. I think that is such a broad questions with a lot. I don't think there is one biggest challenge because all of these problems are actually sort of interconnected, and you don't actually know what is the like the initial issues. Like people sometimes say, income equality is caused by education, but education inequality is also caused by income equal inequality. So it's all very interrelated, and that's why I think um, at least like globally, how people think about like solving these issues, they actually put categories and try to solve all categories at the same time. So there's really no like one biggest issue that is threatening economic growth. However, I personally think thinking about 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, I actually believe climate change is such a big issue. The problem is, the climate change right now probably haven't really felt it, but we start to really feel it around us. So economic the economic growth that we are trying to build over time, it can be swept over in a matter of like days or months when big disasters happen. So I actually think it's the biggest threat that we are facing, maybe not now but in the coming years. So again, I mean, I actually would like to encourage people to find solutions around this space. First, because it's a nascent space, there are so many opportunities for you to, I guess, make solutions. And then second, like just given the size of the issues and the significance of the issues, I think like finding solution in this space, like if you're living for a mission, it's such a worthy mission to go after.
Oh, actually, we have one more question. I'm so sorry for extending some more. Kevin is asking if you think it is possible for a startup or a business to remain profitable whilst making sure to achieve the highest level of sustainability.
Okay, so I'm not sure what sustainability in this context means, but I would probably translate it into caring for environment.
Caring for the environment.
One, I think in a larger sense, like a study has been conducted. I think mostly to like a bigger companies. So probably it's not one to one to like a smaller scale companies, but in the long run, actually companies who are committed to like their community and their environment actually have higher total returns versus those who doesn't. So that's actually like the situation today. And what is causing them is first who are making these companies growing. First, you have the consumers, and you also have the investors. So actually, both consumers and investor nowadays are putting more pressure actually for companies to be more committed around these issues. Even I think in Indonesia right now we start to have a compulsory ESG reporting, so environmental, socials, and governance reporting as part of like an annual report for a company. So there is an increasing pressure. So if a company actually is failing their standard in any of these aspects, actually it's bad for it's bad in the eyes of the investors, and actually a consumer like based on research, they typically wants to like given same price and same condition, actually they actually will prefer companies who shows cares towards their community. So in a larger sense of things, actually caring for your community and for the environment is helping your business. Second, it's probably there is probably a conception of a first mover disadvantage, like the other people doesn't do it and it's not responsible, why should I do it? But if everyone is thinking the same way, then we all will end up in the same sort of shithole. So what happens if we're at that situation is the whole economy is failing, so nobody is benefiting from that situations. And then I guess the third one is there are more and more proofs of consumer willingness to actually pay premiums for goods they think is having a more a social impact or is more environmentally sustainable. So as a business, you can actually capture those price premiums and sort of I don't know how to say it, but take advantage of that situations. And the last thing is actually right now there are new business opportunities that is emerging because of the whole environmental climate action notions. So the things that I mentioned earlier, the how you build like a carbon offset platforms for consumers, like these things it is not there like 5 years ago. Things like right now, if you want to build forests, you also want to make sure like the forest is monitored properly, the forest like the credit coming from those forests is certified properly. So like the whole business services around reforestation is another thing. Now people are looking into renewable energies, the business around renewable energies, and also services and renewable energies. Things like how do I actually measure the gap between my previous emission and my current emission. So things like that. There are so many business opportunities emerging because of this new, I guess, newfound ambition in climate. So I guess winning business in the future is going into this path. One example is Shell. Like right now, Shell is like their ambition is to not be an oil and gas producer anymore, and they're actually one of the biggest players in like a reforestation effort. So I mean, who would think about
Yeah.
Shell like 10
Yeah.
years ago? So I think I guess the business landscape is changing, and more will keep changing into towards that direction. So yeah. So you I mean, as long as you have a clear business model, revenue model, it is very possible to remain profitable.
Yeah, definitely. I do completely agree that I guess, it's the 21st century. We're getting more and more educated, and most of us are obviously wanting to live in this earth for a longer time. Without the earth melting and like climate change and all that, it's a bit crazy. So yeah, I completely agree. Like, it's a very insightful information that you've been giving us. Thank you very much. We've actually hit our time. So thank you very much once again for everything that you've told us. We've learned a lot, especially regarding inequality and climate change. If you have any last messages for the teams out there and future participants, you can do so now.
Sure. I think I've mentioned this several times, but I really believe like the opportunities within this space is very huge, and there are so many untapped potential
Yeah.
that people don't look or haven't looked before, but now it's becoming more apparent. So I hope like every one of you can sort of think about it, and think about what kind of space or what are the ways each of us can sort of contribute for a more positive, I guess, community and environment.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too, and everyone too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Okay, so that's the end of today's talks. Don't forget that we still have more speakers coming up tomorrow. And if you haven't registered for Garuda Hacks 2.0, you can do so until the 19th of November. So for now, thank you for coming and good night.